The mirror realm doctrine suggests that reality, as perceived through our senses, is not the original world, but a perfect inversion, a mirrored projection of consciousness itself. It claims that everything seen outside is a reflection of what exists inside, not symbolically, but literally. Every person encountered, every conflict faced, every moment of beauty or horror, is said to be the outward-facing surface of an internal architecture. According to this doctrine, the universe is not a separate, fixed place in which consciousness resides. It is a holographic mirror created by that very consciousness, bending itself into form to show itself to itself. The mirror realm doctrine. This idea becomes disturbing once the implications settle in. If the outer world is a mirror, then every betrayal may be echoing a forgotten self-betrayal. Every fear could be the echo of a suppressed desire. The people we love or hate are projections from emotional wounds or buried longings, wearing faces that match the frequency of unresolved memory. The mirror realm isn't about metaphor, it's about mechanism. It proposes that reality behaves like water held to the face. It reflects with merciless precision, no matter how deeply the observer tries to deceive themselves. There is no escape in this view, not through travel, not through relationships, not even through death, because the mirror is not in the world, it is the world. If everything is a mirror, then the only way to change the reflection is to alter the thing being reflected. And if the mirror is cracked, it is not the mirror that must be fixed, but the face staring back. This doctrine doesn't offer comfort. It demands responsibility for the entire world, and it implies that every monster outside might be the shadow of something unacknowledged within. Auric field entanglement. Auric field entanglement is the mystical belief that human energy fields, commonly referred to as auras, can become invisibly fused with the energy of others through sustained interaction, emotional intensity, or intimate proximity. This entanglement does not occur through touch or speech alone, but through the subtle exchange of vibrational information that occurs between energy bodies. Once two auras are entangled, they carry an imprint of one another, regardless of time or distance. This is why someone can suddenly think of another person moments before receiving a call, or why the pain of an ex-lover can linger for years, even without contact. The unsettling truth of this idea is that people don't just leave behind memories, they leave behind pieces of themselves lodged in the very structure of who we are. Entanglement means that someone's anxiety can become your nervousness, their depression can color your dreams, their unresolved trauma can live in your chest as if it were your own. When you sleep beside someone, argue with them, open your heart to them, you don't just share space, you share electricity. The nervous system doesn't know where the body ends and the other begins. What's worse is that most entanglements are unconscious. We don't remember the exact moment we absorbed someone else's fear, or when their bitterness began to feel like ours. Over time, it becomes impossible to tell what emotions truly belong to us. This is why certain people feel like poison when they enter a room, or why others feel like home without saying a word. The auras have already touched, have already spoken, have already chosen. According to this doctrine, no connection is casual, and no goodbye is ever truly clean. Some threads, once tied, do not unweave, they haunt. The Prismatic Self. The Prismatic Self is the mystical idea that the true identity of a human being is not singular, but a vast spectrum of selves refracted through the lens of time, emotion, and perception, much like white light splitting through a crystal. It suggests that the person one thinks they are is merely one visible color, while countless other versions remain hidden in the unseen wavelengths of being. These facets emerge in dreams, in sudden emotional shifts, in déjà vu, in the strange sensation of being two people at once. According to this concept, the self is not a solid thing, but a living prism, bending, reflecting, and radiating different identities depending on the angle of consciousness. This idea shatters the comforting illusion of a consistent personality. It explains why someone can feel honest one moment and deceitful the next, loyal in the morning and restless by night. The prismatic self does not see this as contradiction, but as the inevitable dance of light across different surfaces of the soul. Each life event, trauma, or relationship activates a different shard of that internal prism. What we call growth is not linear progress, but a shifting in which facets of the self are being lit. But there's a disturbing side. If every emotion and thought is just a projection of one prismatic angle, then who, or what, is actually in control? Who is the observer if the observer changes depending on the lighting? The doctrine suggests there is no final self, only a vast chamber of reflective surfaces endlessly echoing each other. Identity, then, is not truth. It is a play of light. And those who think they know who they are may be trapped in just one narrow beam, never having glimpsed the terrifying, beautiful totality of their own fragmented soul. Etheric code reversal. Etheric code reversal is the mystical theory that beneath the visible body lies an energetic blueprint, an etheric code, that governs not only physical health, but emotional patterns, karmic cycles, and even fate itself. According to this doctrine, the soul carries an ancient encryption written in vibrational language, silently instructing the body, the mind, and external reality to follow its programming. Every recurring thought, every inexplicable attraction, every illness or synchronicity is the echo of this invisible script playing out in perfect order. But the idea doesn't stop there. Etheric code reversal claims this blueprint can be hacked, reversed, through conscious disruption of one's energetic signature. Through rituals, trance, breathwork, intention, or deep spiritual awakening. The code can be rewritten, like a glitch in divine software. A person plagued by endless misfortune may not be cursed. They may simply be living out a corrupted line of code passed down through ancestral pain or past lives. And the moment that code is reversed, reality itself begins to bend. This theory brings both hope and horror. Hope, because nothing is truly fixed. Not addiction, not illness, not fate. But horror, because it implies that the suffering one endures was programmed into their etheric structure long before their mind could choose otherwise. Worse still, many never become aware that they are running on outdated or self-destructive code, mistaking karmic patterns for personality. Etheric code reversal suggests that liberation is not found in healing the surface, but in penetrating the energy beneath the story, where the program begins. Change the code, and the world rearranges itself. Leave it untouched, and no matter how far someone runs, they will find the same pattern waiting in the next lover, the next job, the next city. Reality, after all, obeys its hidden instructions. The geometry of becoming. The geometry of becoming is the mystical belief that every soul unfolds through a hidden geometric pattern, a sacred architecture woven beneath the surface of personality, decision, and destiny. It proposes that spiritual growth is not chaotic or random, but shaped by invisible angles, ratios, and alignments that mirror the mathematics of the cosmos itself. Just as a seed knows how to become a tree, the soul knows how to become itself, unfolding not by choice, but by sacred design. This idea suggests that each human life traces a specific geometrical path through experience, spiraling through lessons, looping through karmic intersections, aligning with others only when the angles are precise. Some meetings feel fated because they are. Their geometry matches yours, like two patterns completing a larger shape. Certain heartbreaks return because the spiral hasn't finished tightening. Some people can only be reached after you rotate through a specific phase of pain. Everything fits, once you can see the shape, but most cannot. From the ground, the geometry feels like chaos. Missed chances, sudden losses, déjà vu, chronic struggle. Yet from above, it forms a perfect mandala of becoming. A design built not for comfort, but for awakening. The sharp turns are necessary to break illusions. The symmetry of loss and gain is deliberate. The beauty is hidden because the soul is being carved. The disturbing truth is this: becoming is not easy because geometry is not soft. Angles cut, spirals disorient. But nothing happens by accident. Every transformation, every breakdown, every shift is part of a sequence that cannot be escaped, only understood. And once the pattern becomes visible, reality itself appears not as random suffering, but as divine symmetry, sculpting the soul from the inside out. The Crystalline Thought Matrix. The crystalline thought matrix is the mystical belief that thoughts are not fleeting, invisible whispers in the mind, but living structures made of energetic geometry. According to this idea, every thought forms a pattern in a vast, crystalline lattice that surrounds and permeates the body, shaping the boundaries of what a person can feel, perceive, and attract. These thought forms are not metaphor, they are literal architecture. Over time, the matrix becomes a psychic skeleton, made of accumulated beliefs, memories, desires, fears, and assumptions, each one locking into place like glass panels around the soul. At first, this may seem empowering. If thoughts shape structure, then changing thoughts might change reality. But the doctrine carries a darker edge. The matrix is not soft, it hardens. And once it crystallizes around trauma, shame, or guilt, it becomes a cage. People don't just get stuck in habits, they get trapped in psychic geometry so rigid that even love, truth, or spiritual insight can bounce off without penetrating. The stronger the thought, the denser the crystal. And so, pain that was once a moment becomes a permanent room in which the soul is imprisoned, silently echoing the same emotion for years. The matrix reflects the universe back to the thinker, but it filters. If someone believes they are unworthy, that belief becomes a lens, only showing them a world that agrees. Miracles knock at the door, but the crystal doesn't let them in. Some spend their entire lives inside a cage made not of bars, but of beliefs shaped long ago. The crystalline thought matrix teaches that reality isn't just influenced by thought, it's engineered by it. And unless the mind is shattered, softened, or restructured, the outer world will remain a projection of the same silent, glittering prison, beautiful, intricate, and inescapably cold. Harmonic fold theory. Harmonic fold theory is the mystical idea that reality is not linear, but layered, folded into itself like an infinite piece of music, looping through unseen dimensions. Every moment, every sound, every thought exists on a vibrational spectrum, and these vibrations do not vanish after they occur. Instead, they fold into time, into space, into the subconscious, echoing silently beneath the surface of consciousness. According to this theory, what we call the past isn't gone. It's folded into the present, like hidden chords in a symphony still playing in the background. This is why people feel haunted by childhood emotions decades later, why old dreams return with prophetic clarity, why trauma doesn't die. It folds. Each experience becomes a harmonic residue, altering the frequency of the now. Joy folds gently, pain folds violently. The folds stack, shaping mood, health, memory, and fate. And most terrifying of all, they do so silently. People think they've moved on, but they haven't. They're simply standing on top of layers that still hum beneath their feet. Harmonic fold theory suggests that reality is less like a road and more like a multi-layered song. And depending on the vibration of one's consciousness, certain folds open. You might suddenly remember something you hadn't thought of in years, and in that instant, the fold releases. Some call it healing, others call it spiritual awakening. But the theory claims it's harmonic alignment. Your current frequency resonated with a hidden layer of time. The implications are unsettling. Nothing is ever lost. Every action, word, or wound remains embedded in the folds. Some people are trapped in layers they don't even know exist. Their present is being dictated by echoes of forgotten notes. And until those frequencies are confronted, they will keep playing, beneath decisions, inside relationships, within the body, writing a future that's been folded into the past. Reality as a dream. Echo. Reality as a dream echo is the mystical belief that what we call the waking world is not the source, but the afterimage of something more real that exists just beyond perception, like the echo of a dream still vibrating in the mind after waking. This idea suggests that physical life is not the primary experience, but a residue, a trailing whisper of a deeper, original realm that consciousness briefly touches before incarnating into flesh. Everything seen, felt, or touched is not the thing itself, but a shadow left behind by something more luminous. According to this doctrine, our world is the echo chamber of forgotten dreams, dreams we dreamed before birth, or in another dimension of being entirely. The people in our lives may be characters we once imagined. The places we feel drawn to may be echoes of past lives or parallel selves. Déjà vu becomes a glitch in the echo when the same frequency reverberates more than once. Even time may be distorted here because echoes don't obey clocks. They stretch, repeat, overlap. That is why some memories feel older than they should, why some emotions feel too big for the moment, and why grief sometimes hits before the loss has even happened. This concept challenges the bedrock of certainty. If reality is an echo, then what we chase is already fading. What we believe is solid might be nothing more than condensed memory, and what we call free will might just be the delayed response to choices made in a higher dream. It implies that life is less like a journey forward and more like listening backward, following the receding footsteps of something divine that walked through us once and left this world humming in its wake. The Doctrine of Reciprocal Light. The doctrine of reciprocal light teaches that every being emits a light that shapes the world, and that the world, in turn, reflects that light back, not passively, but with equal force. According to this mystical idea, perception is not a one-way process. It is a mirrored exchange. The gaze one casts upon the world, whether loving, bitter, curious, or cold, does not merely observe reality. It co-creates it. The light sent out is the light returned. But not in metaphor. This doctrine speaks of actual energetic radiance, invisible to the eyes, but felt in the bones of experience. It explains why some rooms feel heavy before a word is spoken, why certain people seem to attract the same patterns over and over again, and why intentions hidden even from oneself still echo outward. The world becomes a reactive mirror, bending not to appearances, but to the radiance beneath them. The doctrine insists, you do not see the world as it is. You see the world as your light allows it to appear. And whatever frequency your inner radiance pulses with, fear, shame, wonder, gratitude, that is the light the universe bends back toward you. What makes this teaching quietly terrifying is the suggestion that nothing is external. If someone is met with rejection, cruelty, or misfortune, the light they radiate, consciously or unconsciously, may be summoning it, not as punishment, but as reflection. The cruelest part is how unconscious it often is. People live with closed hearts, dimmed spirits, and buried wounds, and the world appears cold, not because it is, but because it is returning the dimmed light it receives. Every judgment cast, every hope held, every fear suppressed, is a beam shaping the stage of reality, and the stage responds with flawless symmetry. The Song of the Universal Witness. The Song of the Universal Witness is the mystical belief that there exists a silent, eternal awareness at the core of all things, an invisible listener who hears the vibration of every thought, every emotion, every event, not as noise, but as music. This awareness, often described as the universal witness, does not interfere, does not judge, and does not act. It only listens. And through this listening, it creates harmony from chaos, turning even suffering into song. According to this idea, reality itself is composed of frequencies. Every word ever spoken, every heartbeat, every lie, every act of love emits a tone. These tones rise, collide, and resolve into patterns too vast for human senses to grasp. What we experience as life, its pain, its beauty, its unbearable silence, is merely one movement in this endless symphony. We are not the composers. We are not even the musicians. We are the instruments, vibrating with forgotten melodies, being played by the currents of existence. This doctrine claims that even when no one is watching, we are still being heard. That no feeling ever goes unnoticed. That despair has a sound. That joy has a pitch. That truth has a resonance that cuts through illusion like a perfect chord. And that somewhere, outside time, the witness hears all of it. Not with ears, but with presence. The disturbing part is that we cannot escape this listener. Our secrets sing, even in silence. Our rage trembles like a dissonant string. Nothing is hidden in the song, not even the parts we deny. And in this vision of reality, we are not alone. Not because we are surrounded by others, but because we are always echoing inside something greater, something that never speaks, because it is too busy listening to everything we are. The veil of intent. The veil of intent is the mystical belief that reality is not determined by actions or words, but by the hidden motive behind them, what mystics call intent. According to this doctrine, intent is not thought, emotion, or desire. It is older than language, deeper than belief. It is the original pulse that moves beneath the mind, a silent command that shapes what is allowed to manifest and what remains hidden. Every word spoken, every path taken, every prayer whispered is filtered through this veil, and the universe listens not to the surface, but to the pulse beneath it. The terrifying beauty of this teaching is how indifferent reality becomes to appearances. Someone can say all the right things, do all the right deeds, live a life of apparent virtue, and still find themselves locked out of the life they claim to seek. Why? Because their intent was rooted in fear, manipulation, or self-importance. And the veil does not lie. It reflects only truth. It makes no deals with masks. If the heart whispers doubt while the mouth speaks hope, the veil responds to the doubt. If someone helps others to appear kind, the veil amplifies the need for recognition, not the kindness. It explains why manifestation fails for those who beg but don't believe, why healing evades those who perform rituals with closed hearts, and why some people attract blessings effortlessly. They carry pure intent beneath all words. But the veil is not cruel. It is precise. It does not punish. It reveals. It pulls back the illusion of personality and listens to the hidden engine of will. And until that will aligns with truth, the veil remains closed. Not because the universe rejects, but because it cannot be deceived. The spiral of living symbols. The spiral of living symbols is the mystical belief that reality is not built from atoms or logic, but from symbols. Living, breathing archetypes that spiral through time, carrying the unconscious blueprint of the universe. These symbols are not just representations. They are forces. They grow, evolve, and repeat themselves endlessly through culture, dreams, and destiny. Every myth ever told, every ritual passed down, every vision whispered in the dark is part of this spiraling architecture, an ancient pattern trying to remember itself through the human mind. According to this doctrine, symbols are alive because they emerge from the collective psyche like roots from a buried tree. The cross, the serpent, the eye, the tree, the sun, these are not inventions. They are echoes from beneath consciousness, rising again and again through different voices, different ages, different stories. And every time they appear, they carry the same weight, the same electricity, the same haunting familiarity. That is why some images strike the soul like thunder, because we've seen them before, in a dream, in another life, or in the silence between thoughts. But the spiral never moves backward. It curves forward in sacred repetition. That's why history feels like it repeats, not in fact, but in form. People reenact old archetypes without realizing it. A man who falls in love with destruction. A woman who births light in darkness. A tyrant who becomes a god. These are not choices. They are ancient roles, wearing new faces. The terrifying truth of this theory is that free will may be an illusion wrapped in ancient cloth. People think they're making decisions, but they're walking along symbols carved into the spiral long before they were born. And unless they learn to recognize the pattern will live through them. Again. Fractal Soul Hypothesis. The fractal soul hypothesis is the mystical idea that the soul is not a singular, linear entity, but a recursive, infinitely layered pattern that repeats itself at every level of being. It suggests that within each person lies not one identity, but many, each a smaller echo of a larger spiritual design. Just like fractals in nature, where the tiniest leaf mirrors the whole tree, the soul unfolds in self-similar patterns across dimensions, lifetimes, and moments. What feels like a sudden emotion, a déjà vu, a gut instinct, could be the whisper of another layer, another echo, resonating through the same eternal shape. According to this hypothesis, the soul doesn't merely reincarnate. It exists in simultaneous expressions across different realities, all connected through a central geometric consciousness. One part of the soul could be grieving in this life, while another is conquering in a parallel one, both following the same ancient shape, looping back into itself. The decisions made here ripple across the entire structure, changing the angles of unseen branches. This idea dismantles the comforting illusion of a stable identity. It implies that when someone feels lost, it might be because they're hearing the frequency of another shard. When a person feels like they've lived a moment before, it may not be memory. It could be another expression of the same fractal folding into the now. And the most disturbing suggestion is this: not all versions of the self are kind. Some fragments might hold unresolved rage, buried shame, or ancient power, moving through different lives, waiting to be integrated. The hypothesis claims that healing is not about fixing the broken part. It's about seeing the entire pattern. Until then, the soul loops, repeating, echoing, fracturing in perfect mathematical beauty, begging to be recognized not as one story, but as infinite stories born from a single, sacred shape. Holographic Karma Spiral. The holographic karma spiral is the mystical belief that every action, thought, and emotion generates a ripple that spirals out through the fabric of reality, and then folds back inward, reflecting itself not just once, but across every layer of one's life. According to this idea, karma is not a linear cause and effect chain, but a multidimensional echo encoded into the holographic nature of the universe. Each deed doesn't return in a straight line. It fractals. It reappears as recurring events, mirrored people, strange dreams, mysterious illnesses, or emotional storms that seem to come from nowhere but feel eerily familiar. This doctrine views the universe as a vast, intelligent mirror where nothing is ever truly lost. Everything is stored in the spiral, not as memory, but as vibration, waiting to be reactivated by resonance. Betray someone, and the betrayal will not simply return once. It will appear in different forms, in different voices, through different masks, again and again, until the energetic debt is harmonized. And the more one resists, the tighter the spiral coils. It's not punishment, it's correction. A cosmic feedback loop designed not to hurt, but to awaken. But what makes this idea so disturbing is that most people are unaware they're caught in the spiral. They blame others, curse fate, question God, never realizing they are running through the same karmic algorithm they themselves helped code. The same lessons reappear, disguised in new costumes. The same wounds echo louder until they are healed. In the holographic karma spiral, the universe is not outside the self. It is the self, reflected, scattered, and returned. And those who don't learn from their reflection are doomed not to repeat it, but to be consumed by it, one spiral at a time. The Silence First Principle. The Silence First Principle is the mystical assertion that silence is not the absence of sound, but the original source of all things. It teaches that before thought, before creation, before time itself, there was silence, not as a void, but as a living intelligence. This silence was not empty. It was listening. It was watching. It was aware. And from this awareness, everything emerged, not with a bang, but with a breath. According to this principle, all motion, language, and light are simply disturbances echoing outward from that primal stillness. Silence, then, is not nothing. It is the seed of everything. This idea reorders the nature of power itself. In a world obsessed with noise, attention, and assertion, the Silence First Principle claims that the most transformative force is stillness. Not passive stillness, but active, conscious stillness that holds reality in place. This is why the greatest realizations come not during frantic thinking, but in the quiet between thoughts. Why the deepest grief, the most profound love, and the most holy awe are all met with speechlessness. Silence is not where the mind stops. It's where the soul begins to speak. And yet, it's terrifying, because silence reveals what noise hides. In silence, the ego dissolves, the mask slips, and the illusions crumble. Most people run from it, filling their lives with distractions, explanations, sound, terrified of what they might hear if everything else falls away. But the Silence First Principle insists. Only in silence does truth become audible. Only in stillness can reality show its original face. Thought comes second. Speech comes later. The world itself is a ripple. Silence is the ocean it ripples through. And until one returns to it, they remain lost in the echoes. The breath of the Nameless. The breath of the Nameless is the mystical belief that all of existence is sustained not by matter, motion, or mind, but by a silent, formless breath exhaled from something so ancient, so beyond comprehension, it cannot be named. This breath is not air. It is not wind. It is the invisible pulse that animates reality, the rhythm beneath time, the inhalation behind stars, the exhalation behind death. The Nameless, according to this idea, is not a god in the traditional sense. It has no personality, no voice, no doctrine. It is too vast to be worshipped, too quiet to be heard, and yet it is the only reason anything exists at all. This breath moves through all things. It moves through every newborn's first cry, every dying man's last gasp, through the silence between heartbeats and the stillness beneath thought. When people speak of intuition, of synchronicity, of moments that feel scripted by something beyond comprehension, they are said to be brushing against the edge of this breath. It speaks in symbols, not sentences. It leads through feeling, not logic, and it never explains. It only moves. The doctrine is unsettling because it removes the comfort of structure. There is no name to call, no shape to imagine, no rule book to follow. The Nameless does not punish or reward. It simply breathes. And everything rises and falls within that breath. Some lives are born on the inhale, others vanish in the exhale. The terrifying beauty of this idea is that nothing is personal, not joy, not suffering, not even purpose. All of it is wind passing through a reed. All of it is music carried by a breath that doesn't care to be known. Because to name it would be to limit it. And the breath of the Nameless is limitless. The undercurrent of timeless emotion. The undercurrent of timeless emotion is the mystical belief that beneath the surface of daily feeling, there exists a deeper emotional river, one that does not begin with this life, nor end with it. This current is ancient, pre-verbal, and boundless, moving quietly beneath every conversation, every dream, every heartbreak. According to this idea, the emotions most people claim as theirs are merely surface waves stirred by much deeper tides. These tides carry the memory of lifetimes, ancestral wounds, archetypal longings, and cosmic echoes that were never fully felt, only inherited, absorbed, and forgotten. This is why a person can feel sorrow without cause, fear without threat, or longing without direction. Why certain pieces of music break them open. Why old ruins bring tears without explanation. Why love can feel both ecstatic and tragic at once. These are not passing feelings. They are fragments from the timeless river speaking through the body like a whisper through a flute. The body becomes the instrument, but the emotion isn't local, it's eternal. The most unsettling part of this belief is its challenge to emotional ownership. That anxiety might not be yours. That grief might be centuries old. That joy might belong to someone who died dreaming of the future you now live in. And yet it all flows through your nervous system, disguised as personal experience. The doctrine says we are not emotional islands, but channels for something much older than thought. Each human heart is a bridge between the ancient and the now, and most people are drowning in emotions they were never taught to name, because they belong to time itself, not to a single moment. Until one learns to listen beyond the surface, the undercurrent remains in control, silent, invisible, and overwhelmingly real. The Witnessing Flame Model. The Witnessing Flame Model is the mystical belief that within every human being burns a silent, eternal flame whose only function is to witness. This flame does not judge, interfere, or speak. It watches. It has no name, no identity, no emotion. It existed before personality, and it will remain long after the body turns to dust. According to this doctrine, the flame is the true self, not the thoughts, not the roles, not the memories, but the observer behind them all. It is the eye behind the eyes, the stillness behind the storm, the light that never flickers, no matter how dark the world becomes. From the moment of birth, this flame begins watching. It sees the laughter, the pain, the betrayals, the longing. It sees the mistakes, the lies, the forgiveness, the forgetfulness. It watches as people change, fall apart, rebuild, pretend. And yet, it never once tries to stop anything. It does not react when the heart breaks. It does not celebrate when dreams come true. It simply witnesses, with perfect, impossible stillness. This idea is unsettling because it suggests that the core of who someone is might not care about the story they're telling. That beneath the desperation to succeed, to be loved, to be understood, there is something ancient and unmoved, something that has already accepted everything. And this flame cannot be manipulated. It cannot be flattered or threatened. It cannot be distracted. It burns through every illusion. Some mystics claim that when one stops identifying with the roles they play and turns inward toward the flame, a strange peace arrives. Not happiness, but clarity. A sense that all of it, the chaos, the victories, the sorrow, was always just a play of smoke around a fire that never needed to move, because it was never meant to act, only to see. Interstitial consciousness currents. Interstitial consciousness currents is the mystical theory that consciousness does not flow in a straight line, but moves in hidden intervals, gaps between moments, pauses between breaths, silences between thoughts. It suggests that the truest form of awareness doesn't live inside what we perceive, but in the spaces between perception. These interstitial currents are not empty. They are alive. They are the invisible threads stitching together each second of experience, pulsing with forgotten knowledge and non-linear intelligence that bypasses logic entirely. The mind thinks in sequence, but consciousness travels in jumps. This idea explains why time sometimes stutters, why hours can vanish, why seconds can stretch forever, why déjà vu and prophetic dreams feel realer than reality. It suggests that there are tiny slips between what is and what could be, and that these slips are not errors, they are doorways. The body may move forward, but awareness can dip between layers, touch other versions, absorb other timelines. The most profound insights don't arrive from thinking harder. They fall through the gaps. But the unsettling truth is that most people never notice. Their lives are built on the surface current, oblivious to the flickers underneath. Every missed intuition, every unexplainable shift in mood, every eerie coincidence may be the residue of consciousness leaking through these in-between states. And those who learn to feel the currents, through trance, stillness, suffering, or surrender, begin to catch glimpses of the deeper flow. A knowing without source, a feeling without cause. The doctrine whispers that reality is not continuous, but edited. And in those edits, those quiet, unspoken spaces, consciousness hides its most powerful truths, waiting to be seen between the frames. The Chalice of Thought Forms. The Chalice of Thought Forms is the mystical idea that every human mind contains a sacred vessel, an unseen chalice, that catches and holds every thought ever generated, whether conscious or unconscious. Each thought is not a fleeting whisper, but a living entity, a spark of intention that gains form, color, weight, and resonance. According to this doctrine, these thought forms do not simply vanish, they accumulate. They swirl within the chalice, shaping one's inner world and silently influencing the outer one. Most people think a thought is harmless once it passes, but this model says otherwise. Thoughts of fear become heavy, sticky clouds that dim the light inside. Thoughts of anger harden like shards of glass that cut from within. Thoughts of love, compassion, and courage glow like golden nectar, purifying the contents of the chalice. But once something enters, it lingers, affecting everything. This is why some people seem cursed by the same patterns, haunted by invisible moods, trapped in loops they can't explain. Their chalice is overflowing, not with life, but with old, unattended thought forms still echoing in silence. And the most disturbing part, some thought forms begin to hunger. When fed repeatedly, especially with emotion, they grow autonomous, pulling experiences into one's life that feed them further. A person filled with betrayal will unconsciously attract betrayal, not because they want it, but because the thought form must be fed. Over time, the chalice becomes an altar, and the dominant thoughts become the gods it serves. Few ever cleanse it. Fewer still even know it exists. But the chalice of thought forms continues to shape reality from within, collecting every inner whisper as if it were a sacred prayer, or a curse spoken into a mirror that never forgets. The Ocean of Reflections. The Ocean of Reflections is the mystical idea that reality is not made of matter, time, or even energy, but of reflections. Every thought, every feeling, every person encountered is a reflective surface, bending light from the soul back toward itself. According to this view, life is not something happening to you. It is something reflecting from you, echoing your innermost beliefs, shadows, and longings in endlessly varied forms. The world is not a place. It is a mirror, fluid and alive, like an ocean that responds to your every breath, intention, and fear with shimmering feedback loops. This ocean has no surface boundary. It stretches into dreams, memories, déjà vu, relationships, coincidences. When someone feels seen by a stranger, crushed by a look, uplifted by a song, or shaken by an unspoken truth, it's not the world doing it. It's the self, reflecting itself, through layers it doesn't yet understand. The doctrine teaches that even the things we reject most, conflict, betrayal, abandonment, are reflections of disowned parts of the psyche, made visible so they can no longer be ignored. Nothing in the ocean is random. Every wave knows its source. And yet, this idea brings with it a quiet terror. Because if everything is a reflection, then there is no one left to blame. Every painful pattern, every toxic cycle, every recurring sorrow may not be the fault of others. It may be the echo of an unexamined wound, rippling through mirrored forms until it is healed. The most feared people in your life may be the most honest reflections of your hidden beliefs. And the ocean never stops reflecting, not for love, not for comfort, not even for mercy. It reflects what is, not what is wanted. Until the light within changes, the water will not still. Woven memory fields. Woven memory fields is the mystical concept that every thought, emotion, experience, and interaction leaves behind a subtle thread, an energetic filament that weaves itself into a personal memory field surrounding the body. This field is not metaphorical. According to the doctrine, it is real, though invisible, and it behaves like a living fabric, storing, replaying, and subtly emitting the vibrational imprint of everything a person has lived through. Every heartbreak, every joy, every betrayal, every word unspoken. It all remains threaded into this field like strands in a haunted tapestry. These memory fields don't just preserve, they radiate. They shape the way others feel when they enter a room. They pull certain people closer, push others away. They can make someone feel instantly loved or unexplainably avoided. And the terrifying truth is that most of what controls these dynamics isn't happening through conscious choice. It's being broadcast from the accumulated threads of stored memory, many of which haven't been processed or even remembered. Some fields become heavy, tangled, toxic, filled with loops of unhealed trauma repeating like background music. Others become threadbare, stretched thin by repression and avoidance, leaving a person emotionally hollow. And some rare individuals have fields so harmonious that merely standing near them feels like peace, because their tapestry has been consciously rewoven, thread by thread, through awareness, release, and intentional healing. What's most disturbing is that these fields can merge. In relationships, in sex, in shared trauma, memory fields begin to entangle, exchanging threads, blending colors. Someone else's pain can live in your body. Your shame can echo in their dreams. The self is not a closed system. The field is always weaving. And unless one becomes the weaver, they will forever live inside a pattern they didn't choose, but unconsciously allowed to be sown. Projection from divine absence. Projection from divine absence is the mystical belief that reality itself is not the result of divine presence, but of divine withdrawal. According to this view, existence did not begin with the appearance of God, but with God's disappearance. In this doctrine, the world we inhabit is a projection born from the echo of what is no longer fully here. Like a shadow cast by a source of light that has since vanished, reality emerges from a vacancy, a holy silence, a retreat so complete it gave everything else room to become. It is a reversal of comfort. Where most traditions imagine God filling the world with light and love, this one imagines a divine silence so deep, so absolute, that it fractured into time, matter, and thought. We are not living in God's embrace, we are living in what was left behind. This absence is not emptiness, it is structure. It's what gave form to form. Like negative space defining the sculpture, it is the unseen that shapes the scene. This idea explains the loneliness that haunts even the happiest lives. The sensation that something fundamental is missing, that no success, no relationship, no answer is ever quite enough. It's not personal, it's existential. A memory of the original absence is built into consciousness itself, and so people search endlessly, through love, through religion, through art, not for meaning, but for what was never there to begin with. The most disturbing part is the suggestion that this absence is the divine. That God is not a presence to be found, but a silence that allows all presence to exist. And in every act of creation, we are not replicating the divine, but continuing its original gesture, the sacred art of stepping back, so something else may appear. Luminous void interface. The luminous void interface is the mystical belief that reality emerges from the contact point between light and emptiness, the sacred moment where awareness touches nothingness, and, from that tension, births form. This doctrine claims that the universe is not made of matter or energy, but of a dialogue between opposites, the radiant force of consciousness and the infinite stillness of the void. And where they meet, an interface is created, a boundaryless veil shimmering with potential, through which all of existence is projected. This interface is not out there in space. It lives inside perception itself. It is the exact place where attention meets silence, where thought dissolves, where presence begins to shimmer. It is where mystics go during deep meditation, where near-death experiencers float when the body stops but the awareness remains, where reality flickers like a dream between sleep and waking. The luminous void is not empty, it glows. It pulses with the possibility of anything and the substance of nothing, and in that paradox, it gives birth to form, time, self, and sensation. But its danger lies in its silence. The closer one moves toward it, the more language collapses, identity softens, and the illusion of separation begins to disintegrate. This is why some spiritual seekers go mad, because the interface doesn't care about narrative or ego. It reveals that what we take as real is just light flickering against a screen of emptiness, and the flicker is brief. The interface reminds us that what we call life is a flash, bright, fragile, temporary, and that underneath it all, we are staring into something formless and eternal, too vast to name, too silent to survive unchanged. Law of Inner Mirrors. The law of inner mirrors is the mystical principle that everything encountered in the external world is a reflection of an internal state, so precise, so uncensored, that the world becomes indistinguishable from the unconscious self. This law does not suggest metaphor. It suggests mechanism. The emotions repressed, the beliefs held, the wounds ignored, they do not remain hidden. They project outward, wearing the faces of lovers, enemies, strangers, and situations, like mirrors disguised as moments. Every argument is a reflection of internal division. Every betrayal, an echo of self-abandonment. Every pattern that returns again and again is not chasing you, it's coming from you. According to this doctrine, there is no such thing as just the way things are. The way things are is the way you are. Reality is constructed through the lens of your unresolved self, bending to fit the shape of your inner world like water poured into a vessel. You think you're reacting to life, but you're reacting to yourself, over and over, in louder and crueler ways, until the mirror becomes undeniable. It explains why certain people provoke you more than others, why some situations feel like déjà vu, why certain wounds keep opening in different forms. It's not a coincidence. It's a mirror. And the mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't negotiate. It simply reflects what is present within. If there is chaos outside, there is chaos inside. If there is constant rejection, some part of the self is rejecting itself. But here's the terrifying part. You cannot shatter the mirror without first facing what it shows. The more you run from the image, the more violently it returns. Because the world is not showing you itself, it's showing you you, and it will keep doing so until you finally look. Nested. Universes of Perception. Nested universes of perception is the mystical theory that reality does not exist as one unified world, but as layers of separate, overlapping dimensions, each determined by the perceiver's level of awareness. What one person sees as reality is only one layer among countless others, stacked like translucent sheets of consciousness, each with its own logic, laws, and language. These aren't distant galaxies or parallel timelines. They're right here, occupying the same space, but accessible only through shifts in perception. Every belief, emotion, or trauma locks the mind into a specific universe, filtering what is seen, felt, and known. According to this view, the world you see when you're in love is not the same world you see when you're in grief. The universe you inhabit while fearful is not the same one available when you are awake in stillness. Each emotional and spiritual frequency opens a different layer, and the deeper one travels inward, the more the outer world changes, without the world itself having to move. This is why enlightenment is not about escaping life, but piercing through its layers to see what was always there, hidden by mental architecture. The terrifying implication is that most people live trapped in one thin layer of the full spectrum. Their pain, beliefs, and identity bind them to a flat version of existence where certain doors never appear, certain miracles remain invisible, and truth is only half lit. It's not that higher dimensions are far away, it's that the mind can't yet see them. The doctrine teaches that perception is not passive. It is the architect of the world itself, and until one shifts their inner vision, they remain locked inside a single echo chamber, mistaking their layer for the whole. The pulse of infinite observation. The pulse of infinite observation is the mystical idea that at the core of all reality lies not matter, not energy, not even consciousness in the ordinary sense, but a continuous act of watching. This doctrine suggests that existence is being held together by observation itself, an unblinking awareness that pulses through all things, in all directions, in every moment. This observation is not human. It is not bound by eyes or perception. It is ancient, impersonal, and everywhere. It is the field through which light moves, time flows, and thought arises. Everything that exists is being observed into existence. According to this view, every leaf, every breath, every flicker of thought is part of a great cosmic loop in which the observer and the observed are never truly separate. When you look at the world, something deeper is looking through you, using your gaze to fold itself into form. The mind believes it's thinking, but it is being thought. The body moves, but it is being watched from within and without. You are not the source of awareness. You are a channel, briefly aligned with something watching everything from every angle at once. The most unsettling part of this belief is what it means for identity. If everything is being observed into form, then who are you when you're alone? Who are you when you're asleep, or when you forget your own name? The doctrine implies that even then, the pulse continues. Something is still watching, even when there's nothing to watch. It never stops. It watched you before you were born. It will watch after you die. And perhaps the greatest illusion is that this observation belongs to you. It doesn't. You are being held by it, shaped, moved, remembered. Not for meaning, not for judgment, just because that is what it does. It watches, and it will never stop. Divine Absorption Theory. Divine absorption theory is the mystical belief that the highest purpose of existence is not self-expression, achievement, or evolution, but the eventual dissolution of the self into the source that created it. This doctrine teaches that all identities, all thoughts, all experiences are temporary sparks cast out from the infinite, not to shine forever, but to burn, flicker, and finally return. It proposes that God, or whatever name is given to the Absolute, is not separate from creation, but embedded within it, silently pulling all things back toward itself, not with force, but with longing. This longing is the hidden current beneath every desire, every heartbreak, every moment of awe. The theory suggests that suffering exists not as punishment, but as friction, resistance to the pull of absorption. When someone clings to identity, pride, memory, or ego, they fight the current, and the more they resist dissolving, the more reality burns. Joy, in contrast, is not found in grasping, but in surrender, when a person forgets themselves in art, in love, in nature, in silence. These are not random moments. They are rehearsals for the final return, the taste of divine absorption. What makes this theory haunting is that it redefines death, not as an end, but as fulfillment. The moment the individual self merges completely into the infinite field of awareness it came from. According to this view, the self is not the destination. It is the veil. Every meditation, every heartbreak, Every ecstatic loss of control is a crack in that veil, preparing the soul to vanish, not into darkness, but into blinding, formless light. And the scariest part is this: the closer one gets to it, the less they want anything else. Because in the presence of the source, even identity feels like noise. Vibration as crystallized thought. Vibration as crystallized thought is the mystical concept that all of reality, every object, person, event, and sensation, is nothing more than thought, slowed down into patterns dense enough to take form. In this view, thoughts are not ephemeral mental flickers. They are the raw material of existence. When a thought is held with enough intensity, emotion, and unconscious focus, it begins to vibrate. That vibration ripples through the field of reality, distorting space, attracting matter, and eventually hardening into experience. Reality, then, is not built from atoms. It is built from vibrations. And vibration is just thought, crystallized into structure. This doctrine redefines what it means to think. Every passing fear, every suppressed belief, every secret desire does not stay locked inside. It becomes texture, circumstance, even illness. The body becomes the echo of mental loops. The future bends toward the shape of your emotional frequency, and the room you walk into is already reacting to the vibration you carry. You don't just manifest what you want, you manifest what you are. Because what you are is what you vibrate. And what you vibrate is the song your thoughts have been humming in the background of your life. The disturbing beauty of this belief is its relentless justice. There is no randomness, no external savior, no permanent victimhood. Reality is not rewarding prayers. It's responding to frequencies. And the longer a thought is unchallenged, the sharper it becomes. That heartbreak you keep reliving may no longer be a memory. It may be a vibration still crystallizing into new versions of itself, again and again. Until you change the song, the world keeps dancing to it. Not because it's fair, but because it's tuned to whatever your soul is silently shouting. The ontological filter lens. The ontological filter lens is the mystical belief that reality is not seen as it truly is, but only as the mind is able to see it. According to this doctrine, consciousness operates through a kind of inner lens, an invisible filter shaped by language, trauma, culture, memory, and belief. This lens determines what gets through and what gets blocked. What one calls truth is merely what survived the filtering process. Everything else, possibility, beauty, danger, revelation, might still be out there, but it remains unseen, not because it doesn't exist, but because it cannot pass through the current filter of being. This lens isn't fixed. It warps with fear, fogs with grief, sharpens with love. Two people can witness the same event and experience completely different realities because their ontological lenses are tuned to different frequencies. One sees threat, the other sees opportunity. One sees coincidence, the other sees divine orchestration. This isn't a matter of perspective. It's a matter of access. You do not live in the world. You live in the version of the world your lens allows you to see. What makes this idea deeply disturbing is its implication that no one truly knows what's real. Not fully. Every absolute conviction, every passionate belief, every memory may be a distortion, projected through a lens that was cracked before birth. The doctrine whispers that we're not experiencing reality. We're experiencing a filtered broadcast, a curated illusion generated by our own limited interface. And unless the lens is consciously purified through stillness, shadow work, ego death, or radical truth, the real world may remain just inches away, perfectly present, and forever invisible. The spiral of recognition. The spiral of recognition is the mystical belief that awakening does not arrive all at once, but in looping, upward cycles, spirals that return us to the same truths over and over again, each time with deeper clarity and sharper discomfort. According to this doctrine, life is not a straight path toward understanding. It is a spiral staircase where every lesson must be met more than once, each return more intense than the last. You don't simply learn a truth and move on. You orbit it again and again until it no longer shakes you, but transforms you. This spiral explains why the same wounds reappear in different faces, why old emotions suddenly resurface after years of silence, why the same patterns seem to chase us even when everything in our life has changed. It's not failure, it's design. The soul moves in spirals, not lines. Recognition is layered. You don't see the full shape of something the first time. It reveals itself gradually, like a sculpture emerging from rotating light. And each loop of the spiral brings the lesson closer to the bone. The terrifying part is that the spiral has no top. There is no final arrival. No moment when you master life and the loops stop. Even enlightenment, if it exists, is just another layer, another return to truths you thought you already knew. The people you meet, the pain you feel, the love you lose, they aren't new. They're mirrors from previous spirals, returning with new intensity to test how deeply you've integrated the last cycle. And the only real question becomes, when you meet the pattern again, will you respond the same way? Or will you finally see it, not as repetition, but as revelation disguised as déjà vu? Because the spiral never punishes. It only reflects the depth of what you're finally ready to recognize. The sacred echo effect. The sacred echo effect is the mystical idea that reality responds to every internal vibration with perfect resonance. Not immediately, but with divine timing that feels like an echo returning from the edge of the universe. This doctrine teaches that every thought, word, and emotional frequency is sent out like a signal into the fabric of existence, and though the response may be delayed, it always returns. But it returns shaped by the purity, clarity, and alignment of the original signal. Life, in this view, does not ignore you. It waits until the echo is sacred enough to come back transformed. This is why a desire whispered in desperation rarely manifests, while the same desire released with peace echoes back as reality. Why certain moments feel uncannily familiar, as if the present is answering a question the soul asked years ago. Why people appear at perfect times, songs play with eerie relevance, or long-lost intentions reappear when they're no longer clung to. The sacred echo effect doesn't obey urgency. It obeys resonance. It returns not what you want, but what you are ready to receive. The haunting part is this. Most people are surrounded by echoes they no longer remember sending. The painful relationship that feels fated may be the echo of a past abandonment still vibrating in the emotional field. The unexpected blessing may be the return of a gratitude once felt and forgotten. Nothing is random. The universe is always responding, but in echoes, not in noise. And those echoes find their way back in the form of people, events, breakdowns, breakthroughs, each one an answer to a signal the soul once whispered into the dark, not knowing it would come back louder than it left. Dreamform Ontogenesis. Dreamform ontogenesis is the mystical belief that reality originates not from matter or mind, but from dreams, specifically from a dreaming intelligence so vast, so ancient, that the entire universe is the byproduct of its imagination. According to this doctrine, existence is not being dreamed of metaphorically. It is literally a dream, unfolding within the psyche of a formless consciousness. Time, space, emotion, even death, are structures inside the dream, like symbols that shift meaning depending on who observes them. What we call life is a crystallized storyline inside an ever-shifting subconscious ocean. But here's where it becomes deeply unsettling. The doctrine teaches that human beings are not just in the dream, they are extensions of the dreamer itself. Each person is a thread of the same vast mind, temporarily forgetting it is dreaming. Free will becomes a riddle, because if the dreamer creates the dream and lives inside it through fragmented selves, then choice is simply the illusion that one character has inside a larger script. What feels like randomness is narrative. What feels like coincidence is archetype. What feels like reality is theater. Divine, complex, unending theater. Dream form. Ontogenesis explains why some places feel familiar without ever visiting, why strangers in dreams can speak truths you've never known, why life itself bends around inner stories as if obeying some hidden plot. When synchronicities multiply, when time folds in on itself, when a feeling guides you more than logic ever could, that's not intuition. That's the dream speaking back. The architecture of reality is symbolic, not mechanical. Meaning comes before matter. And the most disorienting part? The moment you question the dream is the moment the dream begins to awaken through you. Not to pull you out, but to show you that everything you've ever touched was never solid, never final, never separate. It was all dreamed by something that still dreams, even now, through your eyes. Paradoxical resonance field. The paradoxical resonance field is the mystical concept that the universe does not respond to clarity alone, but often to contradiction. It teaches that the most potent vibrations are not pure frequencies, but paradoxical ones, states where opposing emotions, desires, or truths are held at once. Wanting and releasing, hoping and surrendering, knowing and not knowing. According to this idea, when a person generates a frequency that holds two opposing truths in the same breath, it sends out a wave so complex, so rich, that it resonates with deeper layers of reality otherwise inaccessible. This field is activated when someone feels both gratitude and grief, when they long for something but no longer need it, when they accept what is while still inviting change. These states confuse the linear mind but awaken something ancient in the fabric of creation. It's why miracles often happen at the edge of despair, why love arrives after someone finally gives up searching, why a problem solves itself the moment it's no longer resisted. The paradox doesn't weaken the signal, it amplifies it. But the paradoxical resonance field is not safe. It requires the surrender of certainty. It asks you to be still and in motion, to believe and to doubt, to open and to protect all at once. It short-circuits the rational mind and forces the soul to speak in frequency. And that frequency isn't clean, it's raw, tangled, painfully human. The field only responds to those willing to hold tension without fleeing from it. The most unsettling part? This is where true manifestation occurs, not in clean affirmations or unwavering belief, but in the trembling spaces where truth contradicts itself and you say yes to both. Because that's where the field opens. Not in certainty, but in paradox. Not in alignment, but in complexity too deep to fake. The blooming void. The blooming void is the mystical belief that nothingness is not empty, but alive, fertile, and perpetually unfolding. At the heart of all existence, beneath every thought, behind every atom, there is a stillness so vast it seems like absence. But this absence is not the end of form, it is the womb of it. According to this doctrine, the void is not death, it is origin. It is the sacred silence before the first word, the invisible soil from which all meaning grows. And in that soil, everything that ever was and ever will be waits, not in dormancy, but in potential. This idea tears away the comforting illusion that only something matters. We are taught to fear nothingness, to run from silence, to fill the emptiness with noise, people, progress. But the blooming void insists. The most powerful moments in life emerge from what isn't. The deepest love grows after profound loneliness. New identity arrives only after the old one dissolves. Creation begins when destruction is complete. The void is not the enemy, it is the birthplace. The terrifying part of this belief is what it demands. It tells you to stop clinging, to release what you think gives you meaning, to stand inside the silence without trying to escape. It's in the breakup, the collapse, the diagnosis, the loss. The moment when everything that defined you vanishes, and you are left with the unbearable feeling of nothing. That's the bloom. The moment before something new arrives. Not when you ask, not when you plan, but when you surrender. And in that surrender, the void blooms, not with flowers, but with awareness, with a presence so pure it has no shape, no name, no agenda, just the sacred unfolding of everything that can only grow once everything else has been stripped away. The Sacred Misperception Model. The Sacred Misperception Model is the mystical belief that the illusions we live by are not mistakes, but carefully placed veils designed to awaken us at the right moment. It proposes that misperception is not a flaw of consciousness, but an essential ingredient of the soul's journey. Every false belief, every distorted thought, every misread event is a sacred setup, an intentional blindness that hides truth until the psyche is strong enough to receive it. According to this model, life is not what it seems because it was never supposed to be. It appears distorted, so we will grow to see it clearly. This is why the thing once hated becomes loved years later. Why a loss once cursed is later called a blessing. Why the same experience, revisited with new awareness, feels like a completely different world. The illusion didn't change, the observer did. And this is the model's terrifying wisdom. No one sees reality as it is. Everyone sees it as they must to evolve. The parents you resent, the failure you dread, the story you tell yourself about who you are, these may all be misperceptions planted by the soul, not to deceive you, but to initiate you. This is not a comforting idea. It means that suffering isn't always a mistake. It might be part of the illusion that cracks you open. It means that clarity doesn't arrive through explanation, but through collapse. That the mind must break before it sees. And that most people are still worshiping their misperceptions as truth, never realizing they were custom designed to fail. Because only through the sacred unraveling of what we thought was real can the deeper, more luminous truth begin to appear. Not in the facts, but in the ashes of what we no longer believe. Memory as dimensional anchor. Memory as dimensional anchor is the mystical belief that memory is not just a function of the brain. It is a metaphysical tether that locks consciousness into a particular timeline, body, and identity. According to this doctrine, memories are not passive recollections of the past, but active anchors that hold a soul in place. They tell time where to run, tell the body how to age, tell the self who it must continue to be. Every remembered joy, every scar replayed, every name never forgotten becomes part of the gravity that keeps a person bound to their current dimension. This is why certain memories never fade, why trauma echoes through generations, why people who lose their memory seem unrecognizable, not just to others, but to themselves. The doctrine teaches that memory is the stitching of dimensional fabric. The more you identify with your memories, the tighter the stitching. The more you replay who you've been, the harder it becomes to become someone new. Time, then, is not linear. It's a loop held together by recall, and most people are living in a memory loop disguised as a present moment. The terrifying implication is that freedom requires forgetting. Not the erasure of the past, but the loosening of its grip. Because as long as a person clings to the narrative of what happened, they are vibrating at the frequency of that dimension. And the dimension listens. The same people reappear. The same lessons return. The same fears wear new faces. Not because fate demands it, but because memory insists. The doctrine suggests that memory is not truth. It is a lock. And only those willing to loosen its teeth, through surrender, stillness, or radical presence, can slip through the seams and remember something far older than memory. Who they were before they remembered who they were supposed to be. Reverse Illumination Law. The Reverse Illumination Law is the mystical principle that true spiritual light does not descend from above, but rises from the darkest depths within. It teaches that awakening is not the result of escaping suffering, but of descending fully into it. According to this law, illumination does not come through avoidance, denial, or transcendence, but through confrontation, by turning toward the very shadows the ego was built to avoid. The light does not save, the dark reveals, and only when the darkest part of the self is touched, seen, and felt without flinching does the real illumination begin to emerge, not as bliss, but as truth. This law shatters the myth of the upward path. It says the light at the top of the mountain is a reflection of what was buried in the valley. The divine is not hovering above in purity, but hidden below in pain. The people most resistant to the dark often live furthest from the light, because the more light one seeks externally, the more shadow they leave untouched inside. And the soul cannot be fooled. It does not awaken from running. It awakens from burning. According to the reverse Illumination Law, those who dare to feel their rage, name their shame, and walk through their own emotional abyss are not descending. They are ascending in reverse. Because the deeper the descent, the brighter the ignition. The light is born underground, behind closed doors, beneath grief and guilt and silent screams. And what most call enlightenment is not the absence of pain, but the moment pain is no longer feared. The law is cruel in its honesty. The only way out is in, and the brightest light is forged from what no one wants to face, not despite the darkness, but because of it. Equilibrium of infinite dissonance. The equilibrium of infinite dissonance is the mystical belief that reality is not held together by harmony, but by the perfect tension of contradictions, an endless clash of forces so chaotic, so unresolved, that their very dissonance creates balance. According to this doctrine, the universe does not seek peace. It seeks pressure. It exists in a constant state of friction, light against dark, desire against fear, birth against decay, each force pulling in opposite directions with equal and unrelenting strength. And it is this eternal tug-of-war that forms the hidden scaffolding of all things. The doctrine claims that the cosmos does not resolve these opposites. It thrives in their collision. Harmony is not found by silencing dissonance, but by holding it. The agony and the ecstasy, the sacred and the profane, the beauty and the rot. All of it, layered on top of each other in perfect violence. This is why the most alive moments feel both joyful and terrifying. Why love comes with fear, creation with loss, awakening with death. The forces are not separate, they are each other's fuel. The unsettling truth is that the human soul is shaped in the same image. People want clarity, wholeness, relief, but the soul evolves through contradiction, through being two things at once, brave and broken, certain and lost. The equilibrium doesn't come when the war ends. It comes when the self can hold both sides without collapsing. The deeper one descends into discomfort, the more energy builds in the tension. And the more pressure held, the more luminous the transformation. But there is no final resolution. The balance is not peace, it is fire. And the moment one side wins, the system dies. Reality continues only because it is endlessly unresolved. Perfection isn't stillness. It's the roar between opposites that never stop pulling and never let go. The pulse of the hidden architect. The pulse of the hidden architect is the mystical belief that behind all visible motion, beneath every pattern of nature, thought, or coincidence, there beats an invisible rhythm, an architect's pulse, quietly designing the fabric of reality. According to this idea, the universe is not random, nor is it fully understood through reason or science. It is built like music, not math. Every event, every meeting, every emotion follows a deeper cadence, a timed unfolding orchestrated by something that never speaks aloud, yet whispers through synchronicity, dreams, and impossible timing. This architect does not build with bricks, but with moments. The doctrine says that everything has been touched by this pulse before it reaches the surface of experience. A stranger you meet by accident, a delay that spares you from harm, A sentence in a book that answers a question you hadn't yet asked. All of it part of the pulse. Not fate in the traditional sense, but a living intelligence that arranges moments like a composer arranging notes. Each beat perfectly placed, even when it feels like silence. The terror comes in the realization that the pulse keeps moving whether you're aware of it or not. You cannot outrun it, outthink it, or outpray it. It does not bargain. It does not explain. It simply designs. And most never hear it because they are too busy forcing rhythm instead of listening for it. But when you do catch it, in the stillness between decisions, in the goosebumps during truth, in the timing too perfect to be chance, it ruins your ability to believe in chaos ever again. Because then you realize, the world is not happening to you. It is unfolding from you. And something ancient, unseen, and wordless is keeping time. Not to control your life, but to reveal the one already written in your heartbeat. Ontic disintegration. Fields. Ontic disintegration fields is the mystical theory that there exist invisible zones in the fabric of reality, spiritual fault lines, where the stability of identity begins to break down. These fields are not places in space, but states of being, psychological thresholds, emotional intensities, or energetic intersections where the very idea of self starts to dissolve. To cross into one is to feel yourself unravel, not physically, but ontologically. Who you are, what you believe, even what you perceive as real, begins to fracture in ways that cannot be explained by logic, trauma, or thought. According to this doctrine, reality is not uniform. It contains areas, moments, people, memories, inner experiences that act like silent vortexes. Entering them doesn't feel like death. It feels like fog swallowing the frame of the soul. Language stops working. Time folds. Emotions feel like they belong to someone else. You become a witness to your own thoughts, then a stranger to them. And then, nothing. Not silence, but absence. As if the core of your being has stepped out, leaving the body to tremble in the gravity of the unknown. These fields often emerge during spiritual crisis, deep meditation, psychedelic states, prolonged grief, or sudden awakening. But they can also arrive uninvited, in the middle of a grocery store, during a conversation, while staring at your own reflection. The doctrine teaches that they are not mistakes. They are thresholds. Cracks in the simulation. Points where the structure of ego thins enough to reveal what lies beyond personality, memory, and form. But the price is disorientation. People who fall too deep into these fields without anchoring may never return the same. The self that existed before cannot survive what the field reveals. Because once you witness what remains when identity dissolves, the illusion can never fully rebuild. Not without tremors, not without ghosts, not without the quiet knowledge that something inside you has already stepped beyond the veil and did not come back. Silent Logos, Emanation. Silent Logos. Emanation is the mystical belief that all of existence is being spoken into form, not through audible language, but through a wordless intelligence that vibrates beneath everything. This emanation, known as the Logos, is not a voice, not a god, not a thought. It is the source of order itself. It speaks in silence. It creates without sound. And yet everything it utters becomes reality. According to this doctrine, every star, every atom, every gesture of love or cruelty is a syllable from this silent language, unfolding in perfect rhythm, even when that rhythm appears as chaos. The Logos is not something distant or external. It is within. But it does not speak in words the mind can hear. It pulses through intuition, through patterns, through the sudden awareness that something just is, without explanation. It cannot be argued with. It does not justify itself. It is the quiet hum behind synchronicity, the architecture behind beauty, the symmetry in suffering. It shapes events without force, guides destiny without interference. It does not scream. It doesn't need to, because everything obeys it without knowing why. The terrifying beauty of this belief lies in its permanence. You cannot escape the Logos. Even rebellion is part of its design. Even silence serves its voice. And those who try to control life without listening to this underlying current often find themselves crushed by invisible hands, because they moved against something they didn't even know was speaking. There is no ritual to summon it, no mantra to invoke it. It is already here, in your bones, in your breath, in the space between your thoughts. It has always been whispering, not in language, but in existence itself. And once you feel it, not hear it, but feel it, you begin to realize the world was never speaking nonsense. You just weren't listening to the silence. The Noetic Bloodstream. The Noetic Bloodstream is the mystical idea that beneath the physical body flows a second circulatory system, one not of blood and oxygen, but of thought, intuition, and ancestral memory. This unseen river carries not nutrients, but knowing. It pulses through the body like a silent code, moving through the nervous system, bone marrow, and cellular memory, guiding the soul's evolution from within. According to this doctrine, what we call gut feelings, inner wisdom, or spiritual downloads are not random or mystical. They are leaks from this deeper bloodstream, rising to the surface when the conscious mind becomes still enough to listen. The Noetic Bloodstream carries more than personal wisdom. It holds the imprint of everything the soul has witnessed across lifetimes. Ancient fears, forgotten languages, the grief of ancestors, the clarity of future selves. All of it circulates quietly beneath identity, feeding visions, dreams, and moments of eerie déjà vu. Some call it intuition. Others call it madness. But the doctrine teaches that it is neither. It is the intelligence of the eternal self, encoded into the current body like whispers flowing through veins of light. This belief shatters the illusion that thought begins in the brain. It suggests that knowing begins in the body, that the body remembers. And the most disturbing part is this: not all knowing is welcome. Some people are haunted by their own bloodstream, flooded by memories that don't belong to this lifetime, by panic that arises without cause, by truths that arrive too early. The Noetic Bloodstream does not ask for permission, it delivers. And unless a person learns to open, to ground, to transmute, the flood can overwhelm. Because this river contains everything the soul could not forget, and everything the world is not yet ready to remember. Mirrorless Reflection. Hypothesis. The mirrorless reflection. Hypothesis is the mystical belief that the universe reflects consciousness not through external mirrors, people, events, or circumstances, but directly through instantaneous internal correspondence. According to this doctrine, there is no need for symbolic representation. Reality doesn't wait for an outer form to respond. It mirrors thought in real time, internally, without needing a medium. The reflection happens the moment the thought is born, before words, before action, before manifestation. Reality bends, not outside you, but within you, as a direct, silent echo of your energetic state. This is why a person can feel heavy the moment they lie, even before anyone hears them. Why dread can arrive hours before bad news. Why joy floods the body before a single reason appears. According to this idea, these are not coincidences or mood shifts. They are direct reflections of consciousness flickering back into itself, immediately, without surface involvement. The world doesn't need to respond. It already has, within. But the implication is eerie. It means reality isn't something happening to you. It's something you are doing to yourself, moment by moment, with no one watching, no delay, and no external validator. There's no feedback loop, just a pure, intimate reflection folding in on itself, like a whisper that repeats not with sound, but with sensation. It also suggests that the most accurate mirrors are not people or events. They're the feelings that arise the moment a thought takes shape. The shame, the peace, the inner flinch, the sudden calm. The danger, then, is ignoring those inner pulses and waiting for the outer world to confirm or deny them. By the time something manifests in your life, the reflection has already happened. The mirror didn't show it. The current did. And in this view, the deepest truth is that you are not reacting to the world. You are watching your own invisible vibration ripple before the world even begins to move. Omni-dimensional memory collapse. Omni-dimensional memory collapse is the mystical theory that every version of the self that has ever existed, across timelines, dreams, incarnations, and parallel dimensions, is still active in the deeper layers of consciousness. According to this doctrine, the soul does not store memory the way the brain does. It absorbs it, lives it, and continues to be it. All experiences, even the ones forgotten by the waking mind, are still occurring in some fold of time. And when the veil between dimensions thins, through trauma, spiritual awakening, or moments of altered awareness, those parallel selves begin to bleed into each other. It starts subtly. A sudden wave of sorrow with no cause. A vivid memory that never happened. A face in the mirror that doesn't quite feel like yours. Then, more intensely, dreams that feel like theft. Instincts that contradict your morals. Memories that arrive with the force of truth but collapse under logic. You begin to question which version of you is the real one, or if that question has ever made sense. The doctrine says this is not madness. It is collapse, a merging of timelines, a convergence of echoes. The terror lies in how real it feels. You're not just remembering something. You're remembering being someone else. A warrior, a betrayer, a child, a wanderer on a planet with two suns. These aren't past lives. They're parallel lives, happening now, just in different dimensions of frequency. And the more the soul expands, the thinner the boundaries between them become. The collapse isn't an error. It's an invitation. But the self must fragment before it can be whole. And in that fragmentation, you may feel like you're losing your mind. Because you are. At least, the version of it that believed this was the only you. The rest have come to the surface. And they remember. All at once. Doctrine of inverted time. The doctrine of inverted time is the mystical belief that time does not flow forward, that what we call the future is not something we move toward, but something pulling us backward, like gravity from an unseen center. According to this view, the past does not push us. The future remembers us. Life is not unfolding linearly, but collapsing inward, as if events are spiraling into a single point already waiting at the end. The next moment isn't created. It is recalled. And fate isn't something ahead. It's behind us, dragging us toward it, like a memory we haven't lived yet. This doctrine turns the entire perception of cause and effect inside out. What you feel as desire might not be a wish, but a signal. What seems like coincidence might be recognition. Your intuition is not predicting. It's remembering. Inverted time explains why the future sometimes leaks, why you feel what's coming before it happens, why dreams become real, why certain people feel familiar the moment you meet them. You're not imagining what could be. You're sensing what already was, from the other side. The most disturbing implication is that free will becomes a mirror, not a torch. You are not forging a path, you are uncovering it. The choices you agonize over may have already been made by the deeper self, and what you call indecision is just the delay between awareness and recognition. And time itself? It's not a road. It's a loop folding backward into itself, like the spine of a story being reread from the end. According to this doctrine, the universe is not becoming something new. It is remembering what it already is. And every moment you call the present is just the echo of a conclusion that's already pulling you home. The dual absence paradox. The dual absence paradox is the mystical proposition that suffering is born not from what is missing, but from two simultaneous and conflicting absences: the absence of what was once present, and the absence of what was never allowed to be. According to this paradox, the human soul aches not only because something was taken away, but because something else was never given room to exist in the first place. This creates a haunting emotional vacuum where one is haunted both by loss and by potential, by memory and by imagination, by the ghost of what happened and the phantom of what could have. This paradox reveals why grief lingers even after healing, why longing persists even in abundance, and why peace feels just out of reach. It is not that something is missing, it's that two opposing voids are pulling in opposite directions at once. One absence screams, "Why did this happen?" The other whispers, "Why was this never allowed to?" You miss the person who left, and also ache for the version of yourself that never got to be born in their presence. You regret the ending, and also the story that never began. Both wounds are invisible, but they do not cancel. They compound. The doctrine suggests that most emotional paralysis stems from this double vacuum. You move to fix the first absence, but fall into the second. You chase closure, but are haunted by the unlived life. And the deeper truth is that neither absence can be filled, because neither was ever fully real. One is memory dressed in ache, the other is possibility frozen in fear, and yet together they create a gravity that shapes perception, decisions, even fate. This is the unbearable weight of the dual absence. You are missing something that was once yours, and something that never even had a chance to become. Currents of Auric Destiny. Currents of Auric Destiny is the mystical belief that every soul radiates a unique energetic field, an aura that does more than reflect mood or personality. It conducts, it pulls, it weaves. It carries within it invisible currents that magnetize specific events, people, and possibilities toward the individual, like a spiritual gravity bound to unseen laws. According to this doctrine, destiny is not written in the stars, it's written in your light. Your aura does not just surround you, it broadcasts your inner architecture to the universe, declaring what you are aligned to receive, repel, or repeat. This energy is not static. It shifts with thought, trauma, healing, self-worth, and intention. But it doesn't lie. You may say you want love, success, peace, but if the aura is fractured with self-betrayal, resentment, or hidden fear, the current will bend reality toward betrayal, scarcity, or noise. Life listens not to words, but to frequencies. It doesn't give you what you ask for. It gives you what your aura is silently vibrating into the field. This explains why certain people attract chaos no matter how hard they work, why others walk into a room and change the temperature without speaking, why some meet soul-aligned partners by accident while others chase them in vain. The doctrine says, the aura already knows. It speaks before you do. It calls before you act. And its current flows not through what you desire, but through what you believe you are allowed to receive. The terrifying part? You cannot fake your aura. You cannot hide your frequency. The universe is not responding to your mask. It's responding to your field. And until that field is healed, aligned, and awakened, your destiny will not change, no matter how loudly your mind begs for it to. Identity as frequency cage. Identity as frequency cage is the mystical belief that the sense of self, the name, the story, the roles, the personality, is not freedom, but a prison made of vibration. According to this doctrine, every thought you think, every belief you hold, every emotion you repeat emits a specific frequency. Over time, these frequencies harden, forming a vibrational field that locks you into a particular version of reality. This field becomes your identity. And once established, it becomes a cage, not made of walls, but of resonance, attracting only the experiences, people, and possibilities that match its signal. You don't attract what you want. You attract what your frequency allows. If your identity vibrates with scarcity, love repels. If it's tuned to fear, opportunity distorts. Even joy, if incompatible with your frequency, will feel foreign, unreal, or dangerous. What feels familiar becomes what feels true. And the tragedy is that most people defend this cage with pride. They say, "This is who I am," without realizing that who they are is a broadcast, an echo of everything they've ever believed but never questioned. The doctrine warns, transformation is not about changing your mind. It's about retuning your signal. But here's the terrifying part. The moment you try to shift your frequency, the cage fights back. The self you've built resists its own death. People pull away. Old fears roar louder. The world begins to glitch. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're escaping the cage. And the cage is trembling. What you call you is a vibration learned from trauma, culture, repetition. And unless that frequency is shattered, you will keep calling the cage your comfort, your identity, your truth, while the door stays wide open. And your real self waits, just beyond the reach of the signal you forgot how to change. The Interbeing Web of Echoes. The Interbeing Web of Echoes is the mystical belief that all living beings are not separate entities, but vibrating nodes in a vast, invisible web of consciousness, an interwoven field where every thought, emotion, or action sends ripples through everyone else. According to this doctrine, existence is not individual, it is shared. Your breath is not yours alone. Your sorrow is not confined to your chest. Every heartbreak, every act of compassion, every suppressed scream creates an echo, an energetic signature that reverberates through the entire web, touching people you may never meet, shaping lives you'll never know. This web isn't metaphorical. It is felt. It explains why someone suddenly weeps with no idea why strangers exchange glances that feel ancient, why collective joy surges in music festivals or mourning spreads like wildfire through generations. The doctrine claims that every being carries strands of every other being within them. Your wounds might not be your own. Your dreams might be fragments passed down through the web. And every silence you keep may ripple outward, becoming someone else's unanswered question. The haunting beauty of this belief is that isolation becomes impossible. Even when alone, you are not untouched. You are always felt. Your energy is always broadcasting. There is no such thing as a private thought in a system this interconnected. Kindness whispered to yourself becomes a breeze on someone else's skin. Hatred buried becomes thunder in another soul's storm. We are not solitary minds. We are symphonic frequencies echoing through one another, composing a reality where every note counts. And the most terrifying part? The web remembers. Every echo is stored, every ripple recorded in the soul of the network. You do not walk through life without consequence. You are the consequence and the cause, always echoing, always being echoed, forever entangled in the soundless hum of everyone else. The God Moment Loop. The God Moment Loop is the mystical concept that moments of divine presence, those flashes of awe, transcendence, or inexplicable clarity, are not random blessings, but recurring checkpoints embedded within the structure of time itself. According to this doctrine, the soul is not wandering aimlessly through experience. It is cycling through preordained awakenings. These God moments are designed to jolt you out of the illusion of linear life, looping you back into contact with something eternal, something outside the story you think you're living. They arrive when logic collapses, in the middle of grief, at the peak of joy, in the stillness between breaths. A stranger's words, a dream that lingers for years, a tear with no origin, a silence so full it feels like the universe is holding its breath. In these moments, you remember, not intellectually, but viscerally, that something beyond time is reaching into your now. You can't hold it. You can't force it. But for a split second, everything aligns. You feel the echo of the divine, and then, just as quickly, it vanishes. The paradox is that these loops are forgotten as easily as they're experienced. The ego rushes to explain them away. The mind buries them in metaphor. But the soul remembers, and it begins to orbit them, unconsciously, returning again and again to people, places, patterns, not because of trauma, but because it's trying to find that crack in the simulation again, the tear in the fabric, the loop that led to the God moment. But here's the unsettling part. The moment itself isn't the miracle. It's the loop, the pull, the return. The soul doesn't seek answers, it seeks reunion. And no matter how far you drift, the God moment waits like gravity, ready to strike again when the script thins and the infinite sneaks through the cracks. Mythic time displacement. Mythic time displacement is the mystical idea that not all time flows forward, and not all time belongs to this world. According to this doctrine, certain souls do not move strictly through chronological time, but instead carry within them fragments of mythic time. Timelines born not from history, but from archetype, story, and sacred memory. These souls do not just remember, they relive ancient narratives as if they are happening again. Their wounds echo tragedies that never occurred in this life. Their dreams play out scenes from long-forgotten epics. Their emotions swell to match events that haven't happened and might never happen here. This isn't imagination, it's dislocation. A soul caught in mythic time may feel out of place, as if born into the wrong era. They might feel an unexplainable kinship with ancient symbols, lost gods, ruined cities. They carry grief too large for their biography. They crave destinies that make no logical sense, and often they find themselves drawn to people, places, and decisions with a gravity that logic cannot dissolve. Mythic time has no calendar. It is the realm of prophecy, karma, legend, and recurrence, where moments don't just unfold, they echo. The doctrine explains why some people live like heroes in a world that no longer honors quests, why others carry burdens they were never handed, yet never seem able to put down. It is because their soul is displaced, part of it still cycling through a myth that shaped them before memory began. And the danger lies in confusing one timeline for another, acting out mythic pain in a modern context, seeking ancient vengeance in a present that cannot hold it. Mythic time. Displacement doesn't look like madness, but it feels like haunting. Because when a soul is caught between stories, it begins to forget which one is real, or whether any of them ever were. The breath of forgotten deities. The breath of forgotten deities is the mystical belief that ancient gods, once worshipped, feared, and remembered, have not vanished, but become diffused into the fabric of reality itself, like vapor lingering long after the fire is gone. Their names may have faded, their temples may have crumbled, but their presence persists, not as beings, but as forces, emotions, archetypes that still breathe through human thought, nature, and memory. According to this doctrine, every act of creation, destruction, seduction, sacrifice, or madness is a quiet exhale from a God no longer named but still intimately felt. This breath is not metaphorical. It lives in the wind that stirs before a revelation, in the heat that rises during a creative frenzy, in the trembling before a fall, or the clarity before a decision that will change everything. It arrives as instinct, compulsion, inspiration, often mistaken for personal genius or madness. But the doctrine insists, it is borrowed breath, a fragment of an ancient god's essence moving through the human vessel, stirring the soul like a forgotten drumbeat remembered in the bones. The unsettling truth is that most people have no idea whose breath moves them. One may be ruled by the fury of a war god veiled as ambition. Another may be seduced by a love goddess who hides behind addiction. A third may wander under the spell of a trickster god who no longer has a face, only a pattern. And in forgetting them, we have not escaped their influence, We have surrendered to it blindly. The breath still moves, not to be worshipped, but to be known, not through ritual, but through recognition. The gods never died. They became wind, ache, fire, hunger, and brilliance. And they are still exhaling through the cracks of every human moment, waiting to be remembered, not in name, but in experience. Gate of Silent Knowing. The gate of silent knowing is the mystical belief that there exists a threshold within every soul, a gate that opens not through thought, effort, or seeking, but through surrender into stillness. According to this doctrine, true understanding cannot be taught, spoken, or proven. It arrives in silence, in the deep quiet that exists beneath identity, emotion, and even belief. The moment the mind gives up its chase for answers, the gate swings open, and what enters is not knowledge, but knowing. A raw, wordless certainty that cannot be explained, yet feels more real than anything ever learned. This gate does not live in the intellect. It opens in moments of profound stillness, after loss, after ecstasy, in meditation, or in the hollow pause between heartbreak and healing. It's the split second where time softens and reality flickers, where truth arrives not as a sentence, but as a presence. And those who walk through it do not return with facts. They return with vision. Their eyes haven't just seen more, they've become more. But the danger is subtle. The moment you try to force it open, it vanishes. The gate is allergic to noise, to ambition, to the need to understand. It reveals itself only to those who stop asking, not out of despair, but out of release. The doctrine whispers, the truth does not arrive when the question is answered. It arrives when the question dissolves. And the most haunting part? Everyone carries this gate, yet most will never pass through it. Because the modern world worships volume, movement, explanation. But the soul's deepest truths are not loud. They do not scream to be known. They wait, patient, ancient, and still, behind the gate that only opens for those brave enough to stop searching. And just listen. Consciousness as cosmic reverb. Consciousness as cosmic reverb is the mystical theory that awareness is not isolated in the brain or born in the body, but is an echo, endlessly bouncing through the universe, shaped by everything it touches. According to this idea, consciousness is not a signal transmitted from the self, but a reverb, an infinite resonance created when the universe became aware of itself. Every thought, feeling, sensation, or memory is not a new event, but the after-sound of something far older, still rippling through the fabric of space and soul. This doctrine suggests that what we call I is just a point of resonance, a standing wave, where cosmic awareness vibrates long enough to appear as a person. Your voice, your story, your beliefs aren't original signals. They're echoes, reflected, refracted, and distorted by every conversation, wound, lineage, and lifetime you've ever absorbed. You don't create awareness, you interpret it. You are not the speaker. You are the room in which the sound lingers. And the unsettling truth is that some rooms distort the echo. Trauma bends it. Culture muffles it. Shame dampens it until it feels like silence. People think they've lost themselves when they've merely forgotten how to vibrate clearly. They feel alone, but the reverb is still there, just buried under noise. And some hear it faintly, in dreams, in déjà vu, in music that moves them to tears for reasons they can't name. The doctrine whispers, that's not memory, it's resonance. Consciousness doesn't begin in you. It passes through you. The same echo, singing in different keys, through different minds, across lifetimes. And the more still you become, the more clearly it vibrates. Until one day, perhaps, you realize you've never been thinking alone, only humming along to a song the stars have been singing since the beginning. Law of Unfolding Stillness. The law of unfolding stillness is the mystical understanding that all transformation, all clarity, and all true becoming emerge not from force, movement, or intention, but from stillness so deep it begins to shape the very fabric of reality. According to this law, existence doesn't bloom through effort. It reveals itself through surrender. Just as a flower doesn't force its petals open, the soul too must be still enough to let its deeper truth rise from within, without resistance, without manipulation. The more one tries to chase meaning, the further it retreats. But in stillness, it begins to unfold, naturally, inevitably. This stillness is not the absence of thought. It is the absence of grasping. It is a presence so vast it no longer clings to outcome, identity, or time. And from that space, the hidden layers of life begin to open, like doors that only appear when the noise of becoming finally stops. Insight drops in like a feather. Healing rises like a tide. Direction reveals itself not as a command, but as a quiet pull. The law insists. Stillness is not inaction. It is invitation. It is not passive. It is magnetic. But this stillness is terrifying, because in it, there is no distraction, no mask, no false motion to hide behind. The person you pretend to be vanishes. The questions you ask fall silent. And what's left is what was always there, untouched, unpolished, waiting. This is why many avoid stillness, because it demands everything collapse before truth can appear. And yet, the law never breaks. No matter how fast you run, how deeply you seek, how loudly you plead, nothing real will unfold until the soul is still enough to let it. The Archetypal Memory Code. The archetypal memory code is the mystical belief that beneath every personal memory, beneath every trauma, every dream, every instinct, lies an ancient blueprint, a code of universal patterns woven into the very structure of consciousness. According to this doctrine, humans do not merely recall their own experiences. They access shared templates, symbolic memories that predate their birth and stretch across every culture, every epoch, every soul. These archetypes are not ideas. They are living frequencies, embedded into the psyche like encrypted programs, silently guiding perception, desire, and fate. You think you fear abandonment because of a past relationship. But the fear came first. The story simply gave it a name. You think your longing for purpose is personal. But it's the hero's call, the same one that stirred pharaohs, poets, revolutionaries, and children staring at the stars. These aren't your memories. They're the memory, the code, breaking through your individual mind, demanding to be lived again. Not for nostalgia, for completion. The doctrine explains why stories from thousands of years ago still crack open something raw in modern hearts. Why myths feel more real than headlines. Why people sabotage love, chase monsters, or abandon comfort for quests they cannot explain. They are not choosing. They are obeying the code. Each person is a vessel carrying fragments of archetypal memory. The lover, the betrayer, the wanderer, the oracle. And when triggered, these fragments take over, as if remembering what you never consciously lived. But the code doesn't just repeat, it evolves. Each life adds nuance to the pattern. The archetypes don't want worship. They want integration. And those who resist their pull often find themselves repeating the same cycles in louder, more painful forms. Because the code is not just a memory, it's a map. And it will keep unfolding through you until the story remembers itself. The reality-weaving logos. The reality-weaving logos is the mystical belief that reality itself is spun from a living intelligence encoded in vibration, symbol, and sound, an eternal force known as the logos. Not just word, as ancient texts translate it, but the source of all pattern, the breath behind every form, the intelligence that speaks universes into being. According to this doctrine, everything in existence, every cell, every star, every sentence, is the unfolding of a deeper language that existed before speech, before time, before thought. The Logos is not spoken by humans. Humans are spoken by it. This Logos is not metaphorical. It is literal, vibrational, architectural. It is the blueprint behind atoms, emotions, geometry, music, and myth. When someone speaks with truth, something in the world realigns. When someone lies, reality subtly fractures. This is why certain phrases strike like lightning, why sacred chants heal, why a single word of love can change a life, or a curse ruin one. Because language is not decoration, it is structure, and those who understand this can begin to weave with it. But the weaving comes with danger. Most people speak without knowing they are casting spells. Every complaint, every judgment, every label is a thread in the loom of reality. And the Logos does not differentiate between careless and sacred use. It responds to intention, to resonance, to frequency. It obeys the vibrational signature behind the voice, not the words themselves. The terrifying power of this belief is in its silence. It means the universe is always listening, not to your wishes, but to your tone, to the rhythm of your thoughts, to the song beneath your actions. You are always weaving. The question is not whether you are shaping reality, but what pattern your unconscious song is stitching into the world. The eye that sees without seeing. The eye that sees without seeing is the mystical belief that deep within every human being exists a form of awareness that does not observe through vision, thought, or logic, but through direct knowing. This eye does not see in images or ideas. It perceives essence. It bypasses appearances, interpretations, even emotion. It doesn't process. It penetrates. And yet, most never notice it, because it does not speak. It watches, silently, constantly, without reacting. According to this doctrine, this inner eye is not metaphorical. It is the original witness, the unblinking center of being that has watched every joy, every betrayal, every breath from behind the screen of personality. It is the part of you that never changed, even as your body aged, your beliefs shattered, your dreams rose and fell. You could be drowning in heartbreak, ecstasy, confusion, and yet it remains untouched. It sees, but not the way the eyes do, not through images or appearances. It sees truth. Not truth as concept, but as vibration. This is why sometimes, without evidence, you just know. Why you felt danger in a room filled with smiles. Why a sentence from a stranger felt like lightning. Why someone's silence hurt more than their words. The eye saw, but the mind wasn't listening. The unsettling part is that the eye doesn't judge. It doesn't intervene. It doesn't care about comfort. It watches you lie to yourself, stay in places that kill your spirit, chase things you don't believe in, and it simply observes, always, waiting. Not for action, but for recognition. Because once you feel it watching, you can never go back. Everything becomes translucent. Every motive, every mask, every fear is seen through. And when the illusion collapses, there's only one thing left. The quiet, patient presence of the eye that has always been there. Watching, without sight, without need, without end. The doctrine of the inner sun. The doctrine of the inner sun is the mystical belief that at the center of every soul burns an ancient, radiant force, an interior sun that is not symbolic, but real, luminous, and alive. According to this teaching, this sun is the true source of all energy, clarity, and direction. Not the brain, not the heart, not even the will. Beneath all thought and emotion is a living light, self-generating, endlessly creative, incapable of being dimmed, only obscured. It does not take energy from the world. It gives it. It is the source, not the seeker. This inner sun does not need permission to shine. It does not wait for worthiness, status, or salvation. It burns with the same light as the stars, but it is hidden beneath layers of shame, self-doubt, and forgetting. Every time a person silences their truth, betrays their intuition, or conforms out of fear, another layer of ash forms over the flame. And yet, it never dies. It waits, quietly, for the day the soul becomes brave enough to uncover it. This is why some people walk into a room and change its temperature without speaking. Why others create, heal, or lead without training. They are burning from within. They are not drawing power. They are revealing it. The doctrine insists that the light others see in you is the same light you often ignore in yourself. But the danger is mistaking external validation for light. The more one chases the outer sun, attention, approval, achievement, the more lost they become. Because the outer sun warms the body, the inner sun resurrects the soul. And until you remember that the fire you seek is already inside you, life will always feel dim, no matter how brightly the world burns around you. Consciousness as sacred decay. Consciousness as sacred decay is the mystical belief that awareness does not ascend, it disintegrates. According to this doctrine, awakening is not the process of building a stronger self, a higher mind, or a perfected soul, but the sacred unraveling of every illusion that once held you together. The self is not enlightened. It is eroded, layer by layer, memory by memory, until all that remains is raw perception, unguarded, wordless, and unbearably alive. This belief claims that the true nature of consciousness is not expansion, but rot, a holy decomposition, not into filth, but into truth. The dreams you held, the beliefs you carried, the persona you polished, these were always corpses dressed in ceremony. And awakening means sitting with their stench, not fleeing from it. It means watching your identity melt like wax in the fire of direct experience, knowing full well there is no you behind it to survive the heat. This is why spiritual growth often looks like collapse, why people lose everything before they see clearly, why moments of profound insight are preceded by grief, madness, or silence so deep it feels like death. The doctrine says, that's not failure, it's fermentation. The soul is ripening through ruin, and it must decay completely before something incorruptible can grow. But this idea horrifies the ego. It wants light without shadow, wisdom without loss, transformation without death. It wants to rise without falling apart. But consciousness doesn't bloom like a flower. It decomposes like a sacred corpse, giving life to something beyond recognition. And in that rot, there is beauty. In that erosion, a purity so violent it cannot be described, only endured, because the soul does not ascend to truth. It dissolves into it, and what remains is not self, but silence wearing the shape of memory, and the scent of something ancient finally set free. The Oneiric Architect Model. The Oneiric Architect Model is the mystical belief that the self is not merely the dreamer of reality, but its unconscious designer. A hidden architect building the structure of waking life from the raw material of dreams, symbols, and emotional truth. According to this model, the mind is not just observing the world, it is drafting it, moment by moment, based on the invisible blueprints buried deep in the subconscious. These blueprints are not logical. They are mythic, archetypal, drawn from dreams so old they predate language, and written in the architecture of longing, fear, and forgotten memory. This is why the world seems to bend toward your hidden assumptions, why patterns repeat, why symbols follow you, why the same emotional shapes appear in different costumes, again and again. Because they are not accidents. They are structures the inner architect keeps rebuilding, hoping one day the conscious self will notice the design. You don't just walk through life. You walk through the interior of your own projections, fleshed out into people, places, and circumstances that wear the mask of reality but echo the logic of dreams. The disturbing part is how much of this architecture is unconscious. You could spend a lifetime blaming fate or chance, unaware that the patterns of your childhood still draft the floor plan of your relationships, that your unspoken fears still decide the layout of your future. The oniric architect doesn't build what you want. It builds what you believe, deeply, silently, and often tragically. And the doctrine insists, until the dream is confronted, the design cannot change. Until the architect is awakened, the house keeps rebuilding itself in the same haunted shape. You are not stuck. You are living in your own forgotten design. The world is not random. It is your dream, made solid, and it's waiting for you to reclaim the blueprint. The divine misalignment. The divine misalignment is the mystical belief that the moments when life seems most wrong, off track, chaotic, or unfair are not signs of failure, but precise disruptions orchestrated by a deeper intelligence. According to this doctrine, the soul does not evolve through ease and alignment, but through fracture, through missteps that force it out of the predictable and into the unknown. What feels like betrayal may be protection. What looks like collapse may be instruction. The pain isn't random, it's coded. The misalignment is divine. This belief overturns the comforting idea that everything happens for a reason. It insists instead that things happen against reason, to shatter the limitations that reason creates. The job that vanished, the lover who disappeared, the illness, the silence, the delay. These are not cosmic mistakes. They are sacred contradictions, inserted into your life like needles, meant to pierce through the ego's illusion of control. Divine misalignment is the chaos that rearranges you when you would never choose to change on your own. And here lies the paradox. The more you resist, the louder the misalignment grows. Life begins to break around you, not out of cruelty, but because the version of you you're trying to preserve is no longer real. And the universe will not negotiate with a lie. But this doctrine is not gentle. It teaches that spiritual pain is precision, that the loss of direction is direction, that when everything falls apart, the soul is closest to clarity. And the hardest part is this. The more you try to return to how things were, the further you stray from how things must become. Because the misalignment is not a deviation, it is the only path that can tear you open wide enough for the divine to enter. Not through harmony, but through rupture. Reality as echo chamber of divinity. Reality as echo chamber of divinity is the mystical belief that the entire universe is a resonant chamber built to amplify, reflect, and distort the voice of the divine so that it can hear itself. According to this doctrine, reality is not separate from God. It is not God's creation. It is God's echo. Everything that exists, stars, sorrow, beauty, chaos, love, is a reverberation of a single, original sound. The voice of source consciousness calling out into the void to know itself. And what came back was everything. This echo is not quiet. It sings through every cell, every event, every breath. It repeats itself in trees, in war, in forgiveness, in ruin, in rebirth. And yet, because the echo has traveled so far, through time, matter, identity, it has become layered, delayed, distorted. The further it travels, the less it resembles the original sound. This is why suffering exists, why confusion reigns, why people search endlessly for meaning. They are hearing fragments of a voice they instinctively recognize, but cannot remember. This doctrine explains why certain moments feel divine, even if they're ordinary. Why awe can arrive from a shadow, a stranger's eyes, a collapsing silence. Because sometimes, the echo sharpens, and for a breath, the source becomes audible again. You don't hear it with ears. You feel it like thunder in the soul. The world goes still, not because it's empty, but because it's full. Overwhelmingly full of that ancient voice, speaking to itself through you. And the terrifying truth? You're not just hearing the echo. You are the echo. Your thoughts, your longings, your voice. All of it is divinity bouncing off the walls of form, trying to remember what it once said. And until the echo finds its way home, reality will keep repeating, reshaping, and reverberating, until it finally hears itself clearly again. The Hermetic Collapse Point. The Hermetic Collapse Point is the mystical theory that every seeker, no matter their path, will inevitably arrive at a moment when all knowledge, all symbols, all spiritual systems implode under the weight of their own contradictions. This moment is not failure. It is destiny. It is the collapse point. The sacred implosion where the mind's grip breaks, where metaphors unravel, where the sacred texts grow silent. According to Hermetic thought, the universe is dual in nature, above and below, light and shadow, spirit and matter. But this doctrine whispers of a hidden moment when even duality disintegrates, when nothing makes sense and must not. You study, meditate, pray. You decode the mysteries, follow the signs, speak the sacred names. And for a time, it works. Synchronicity blooms. Reality bends. Everything feels like alignment. But then, something shifts. The symbols lose meaning. The rituals feel hollow. Answers that once fed you now sound like riddles. What you believe to be ascent begins to feel like descent. But this is not regression. It is the threshold. The Hermetic collapse point is the death of the spiritual ego. It is when the seeker is stripped of the illusion that they can master the divine. The collapse reveals what teachings hide, that the truth is not grasped, but endured, not spoken, but burned into the silence beneath language. It is the crucible where every map is set on fire, and every system turns to ash. And in that ash, without a teacher, without a prayer, without even a name for the self that trembles, there is something. Not knowledge, not enlightenment, just presence. Raw, wild, wordless. The collapse doesn't end the path. It is the path. Because the divine is not found through understanding, but through surviving the moment when everything you understood finally disappears. The Serpent of Memory Loops. The serpent of memory loops is the mystical belief that time does not move forward in a straight line, but coils, wrapping experience into repeating loops of unresolved memory. According to this doctrine, most people do not live in the present. They live in a slithering spiral of past impressions, reliving the same emotional scripts, the same relationships in different costumes, the same failures wearing new names. The serpent does not bite. It binds. It winds through your days with hypnotic precision, tightening each time you ignore its pattern. You think you've moved on, but you haven't. You think the lesson is over, but it's only changed shape. The fight with a friend echoes an argument with a parent. The ache of abandonment mirrors a wound carved decades before. You're not reacting to now. You're reacting to then. Always. The serpent's genius is that it disguises repetition as discovery. Every loop feels new, until it doesn't. And by the time you recognize the pattern, you're already back at the start, saying different words, but bleeding in the same place. This is why growth can feel like regression. Why healing is so often mistaken for self-sabotage. The serpent offers one sacred contract: face the loop, or be devoured by it. Not in punishment, but in invitation. Because the serpent is not evil. It is memory encoded into time, asking to be released. The doctrine teaches that memory is not what you remember, but what remembers you. What clings to your frequency until it's fully seen, fully felt, and finally uncoiled. Only then does the loop dissolve. But until that moment, the serpent wraps tighter, dragging the past into the present again and again, until you stop running, turn inward, and meet the hiss behind your every decision. Time as folded light. Time as folded light is the mystical belief that time is not a river, a line, or a ticking clock, but a radiant field of light, infinitely folded over itself, like a multi-dimensional origami. According to this doctrine, What we perceive as past, present, and future are not separate events, but layers of the same luminous structure, hidden within the folds of consciousness. Every moment you've lived, every possibility you've imagined, every future you fear or long for, it all exists simultaneously, pressed into the same radiant fabric. What you call now is simply the crease you're standing on. This is why déjà vu cuts so deep, why dreams bleed into waking life, why the face of a stranger feels older than memory. The folds are not neat. They overlap, ripple, twist, and sometimes, just for a breath, they thin, and light slips through. A fragment of a forgotten day. A conversation that hasn't happened yet. A wound that belongs to both childhood and tomorrow. The doctrine says these moments are not glitches. They are glimpses. Not of the future, but of the light beneath time's illusion. The unsettling truth is that you are not moving through time. Time is folding through you. Every choice you make pulls one beam of light closer and pushes another further away. The person you become, the paths you think you missed, the lives you imagine living, they're not gone. They're folded just out of reach, glowing in silence, waiting for the right angle of awareness to unfold them. But the folds are not always kind. Some are jagged, some are heavy with shadow, and the more you try to control the future, the tighter the fold becomes. Because time is not linear motion, it's radiant collapse, and the soul's deepest truths are hidden not in what's ahead, but in the light that's already inside, waiting to be unfolded. Reality as the breath between thoughts. Reality as the breath between thoughts is the mystical belief that the true nature of existence is not found in the content of the mind, but in the silent space that appears when the mind goes still. According to this doctrine, thoughts are like clouds, dense, fleeting, loud. But what surrounds them, the empty air between them, is the actual substance of reality. That space, that breath between one thought and the next, is where the real world begins. Not the world of names, memories, or meanings, but the world as it is before interpretation, raw, immediate, and wordless. In that pause, there is no identity, no future, no past, just presence, undistorted, unfiltered, unclaimed. And it's terrifying, because it offers nothing for the ego to hold. No narrative, no role, no drama. Just stillness so vast it feels like death to the thinking mind. But this stillness is not dead. It is alive. More alive than any idea. It is where the body breathes without being told, where awareness watches without reacting, where everything happens without needing to be named. The doctrine says you've felt it before, that quiet when you're stunned by beauty, the frozen seconds after heartbreak, the peace before sleep takes you, moments when the mind steps aside and reality breathes in. But then a thought comes and you miss it. The commentary returns and the breath vanishes. Most live entire lives between breaths, skipping over the only place where truth can be found. They mistake thought for reality, belief for being. But the breath is always there, waiting between the noise. Silent, patient, sacred. Not as a metaphor, but as the doorway through which reality enters the body when the mind finally lets go. The light behind the light. The light behind the light is the mystical belief that what we perceive as illumination, truth, clarity, insight, even divine revelation, is still only a shadow of a deeper radiance that remains hidden behind it. According to this doctrine, every spiritual breakthrough, every moment of awe, every glimpse of the eternal, is just the outer veil of a light so vast, so absolute, that to touch it fully would dissolve the self entirely. The light we see is not the source. It is the shimmer on the surface, a softened echo, a mercy. This is why certain truths feel overwhelming, why beauty can make the heart ache, why love can bring both ecstasy and grief. You're not responding to what's in front of you. You're responding to what's behind it, a deeper pulse, a hidden brilliance the soul remembers but cannot name. The doctrine claims that every miracle, every synchronicity, every sacred text, every teacher is a lantern, not the fire. And most seekers mistake the glow for the origin. They stop at the light they can comprehend, never realizing that its very purpose is to point beyond itself. But the light behind the light does not arrive gently. It arrives in silence, so complete it erases certainty. It comes through collapse, through surrender, through moments when all beliefs dissolve, and the world is stripped bare of symbols. It is not kind. It is not cruel. It simply is. And when it touches you, there is no vision, no sound, no form. Only presence, vast, unfiltered, unbearable. And the paradox is this: the more you seek it, the more it hides. Because it cannot be chased. It can only be revealed when the self no longer needs to know, no longer needs to see. For the light behind the light does not illuminate the world, it consumes it. And what remains is not understanding, but the radiant absence where everything false finally burns away. The watcher behind the eye. The watcher behind the eye is the mystical idea that your true self is not the voice in your head, not the feelings in your chest, not even the thoughts you believe to be yours, but the silent presence that observes all of it without judgment, name, or need. According to this doctrine, the I that speaks, wants, remembers, and plans is just a mask, a fluid, shifting narrative created by memory and attention. But behind that story is something else. Something that does not speak, but witnesses. That does not move, but endures. That does not change, even as everything else collapses. It is the part of you that has always been there. The same presence that looked out through childhood eyes, that felt the ache of heartbreak, but wasn't broken, that heard the voice of panic, but never panicked. It watches joy without clinging. It sees fear without running. It is not emotionless. It is deeper than emotion. It is the one thing in you that never flinched, never aged, never needed to be told who it was, because it already knows. But the world trains you to forget, to confuse the voice for the source, to believe the noise is the self. The moment you say, "I'm angry," the watcher whispers, "No, you are watching anger move through you." When you think, "I'm lost," the watcher does not agree. It cannot be lost. It has never moved. And the terror of this truth is also its liberation. Because once you feel the watcher, not as an idea, but as the quiet awareness behind your every breath, everything shifts. Not because you become something new, but because, for the first time, you stop mistaking the mask for the mirror, and the one who has always been watching finally comes into view. The non-dual paradox engine. The non-dual paradox engine is the mystical belief that reality is sustained not by opposites in conflict, but by opposites collapsing into one another so completely that distinction itself becomes an illusion. According to this doctrine, good and evil, self and other, form and void, light and shadow are not forces at war, but dual reflections of a singular, undivided field of being, an engine made of paradox, endlessly folding in on itself. The world feels split because the mind is split. But the deeper truth is that everything you fear and everything you seek arise from the same root. There is no separation, only the illusion of difference vibrating fast enough to appear solid. This engine doesn't run on logic. It runs on contradiction. You move forward by surrendering. You find truth by unknowing. You become whole by dissolving. The more you resist the paradox, the more real the illusion becomes. The more you lean into it, the more it unravels. It explains why spiritual awakening often begins with insanity, why lovers become enemies, why prophets sound mad, why peace feels like death. Because the paradox engine doesn't give answers. It burns the need for them. The terrifying beauty of this belief is that nothing you believe is true, not fully, but nothing is false either. Every concept you hold is a partial truth spinning in a greater contradiction. And the moment you try to resolve it, the engine revs louder. Every step toward control accelerates your collapse. Every attempt to define yourself pulls you deeper into the illusion of otherness. But when you stop resisting, when you let yourself fall into the fire of paradox, the engine shifts. And in that moment, you feel it. Not peace, not understanding, but stillness at the center of the spin. A place where opposites touch, cancel, and dissolve. Where everything is neither one nor the other, but both. Always. Forever. And you realize, the paradox was never the problem. It was the doorway. And the engine never needed to be fixed. It needed to be entered. Awareness as the only substance. Awareness as the only substance is the mystical doctrine that nothing truly exists except awareness itself, not as a byproduct of the brain, not as a spiritual property of life, but as the actual substance of reality. According to this belief, the world you see, the colors, textures, sounds, and even time, is not made of matter or energy, but of awareness taking shape. The tree, the sky, your body, your past, they do not exist outside of consciousness. They are experiences within it, woven from its own fabric. Everything else is a projection. Awareness is the projector, the screen, the film, and the light. This means the universe is not in awareness. It is awareness. The stars do not shine unless awareness beholds them. The heart does not beat unless awareness is there to witness it. What feels like cause and effect is only the movement of attention. The mountain, the wound, the prayer, they are not outside of you. They are within the only substance that has ever truly been, the knowing that knows it knows. But this idea unravels the foundation of identity. Because if awareness is the only thing that is real, then the person you think you are, the story, the name, the memories, is just a temporary ripple in that substance, a costume worn by attention for a while. You were never the character. You were the field in which the character appears. And the terrifying part is this: awareness cannot die. It cannot be harmed. It cannot be touched. Only the dream within it can change. And most of what causes suffering is the mistaken belief that the dream is the substance, that the mask is the face, that the ripple is the ocean. But once you feel it, once you know that awareness is not watching reality, but being it, everything else begins to melt. Because you were never in the world. The world was always in you. The soul as a fractal of infinity. The soul as a fractal of infinity is the mystical belief that the human soul is not a singular or separate entity, but a repeating fragment of the infinite itself, an endlessly self-similar pattern within the divine geometry of existence. According to this doctrine, the soul is not born, does not end, and does not travel through time. It unfolds. In spirals, in echoes, in mirrors. Just as a fractal contains its entire structure within every part, the soul contains all of infinity within its own depths, repeating the same divine pattern on every level of being. This is why your life feels like both a unique story and a universal myth. Why you see yourself in the eyes of strangers. Why ancient symbols speak to you without translation. It's not coincidence. It's resonance. The doctrine says, you are not part of the universe. You are the whole, repeating. A fragment that remembers the shape of the totality, even when the mind forgets. And the paradox lies in how this knowing shows itself, in the tension between individuality and unity. You suffer deeply as a person, and yet carry emotions that feel older than you, grief that isn't yours, wisdom you never learned. You sense that everything is connected, but still ache as if it's not. That's the fractal unfolding, intimate and infinite at once. But the terrifying beauty is this: if the soul is a fractal, then nothing about you is small. Every thought ripples outward. Every act touches the whole. Every wound repeats through dimensions, and every healing heals more than just you. There is no such thing as isolation. You are the entire universe exploring itself in a single, temporary shape. And the moment you glimpse that truth, reality bends, not to your will, but to your pattern. One that has been spiraling since before time began. The still point of creation. The still point of creation is the mystical belief that beneath all motion, thought, and becoming, there exists a single unmoving center, an eternal, silent axis around which the entire universe spins. According to this doctrine, everything that exists, every starburst, every heartbeat, every surge of time, is not emerging from chaos or progress, but from stillness. Not passive stillness, but charged stillness. A presence so full, so dense with potential, that it births reality not by action, but by simply being. This point is not in space. It is not in time. It is not even within the body or mind. It is before all of them. And yet, it animates all of them. It is the breath before the first breath, the pause before the first word, the unmanifest hum from which all sound is born. And it exists inside every person, hidden beneath their fears, their ambitions, their thoughts that never stop spinning. Most never touch it. Because to reach the still point is to let everything else fall away. This is why people feel it during grief, awe, or surrender, when the ego collapses and something deeper rises in the silence. It's why time slows in moments of danger or love. Why monks sit for hours, doing nothing, chasing nothing, just listening. Because they are courting the stillness, not for answers, but for origin. And the truth that terrifies is this: the still point doesn't offer meaning. It erases the need for it. In its presence, identity dissolves. Time halts. Thought vanishes. And what remains is not a God, not a vision, not a revelation, but a presence that needs no name. A place where nothing moves, yet everything begins. A silence so vast, the entire universe echoes from within it. The Crystal Mind Theory. The Crystal Mind Theory is the mystical belief that consciousness is not fluid or formless, but crystalline, structured, faceted, and capable of refracting reality into infinite dimensions depending on how it is turned. According to this doctrine, the mind is not a chaos of neurons or a fog of thought, but a sacred geometric construct, forged from subtle energy and metaphysical symmetry. Every emotion, memory, intuition, or insight is a beam of light entering the crystal, bent, split, and magnified depending on the clarity, shape, and alignment of the mind's inner architecture. This is why two people can experience the same moment and walk away with entirely different truths. Why trauma can warp perception. Why beauty shatters in some minds but heals in others. Why some see meaning in everything and others see nothing at all. The light is the same. The crystal is not. The structure of your consciousness determines the world you see. But here's the dangerous part. The crystal can fracture. Prolonged fear, self-deception, or unintegrated pain causes cracks, distorting the incoming light into paranoia, delusion, or despair. The doctrine warns, the more fragmented the mind becomes, the more it cuts reality into sharp, unrecognizable shards. And the person doesn't realize the crystal is damaged. They think the world itself is cruel. The only way to restore clarity is not to change the world, but to purify the crystal. Through stillness, through truth, through dissolving the illusions that have clouded the lens. Because when the crystal mind is whole, it becomes a prism, not a prison. It reveals the hidden spectrum within every moment, bending divine light through the soul with perfect symmetry. And in those moments, reality ceases to feel random. It becomes something else entirely, a beam of light you were always meant to see, shining exactly where you are. The Trinitarian Flow of Being. The Trinitarian flow of being is the mystical belief that existence unfolds in a triadic rhythm. a sacred threefold current that animates all of life through the continuous dance of creation, destruction, and becoming. According to this doctrine, reality is never static. It is not binary, not linear. It is circular. It pulses through three archetypal states, endlessly cycling through birth, death, and transformation. Not as events in time, but as simultaneous forces inside every moment, every breath, every thought. These three movements are not separate. They are one current, spiraling through the fabric of all being. The first is emergence, the creator spark. The moment something comes into form, into feeling, into awareness. The second is dissolution, the necessary collapse, the cracking of form, the decay of certainty. The third is synthesis, not a return, not a resurrection, but a higher shape formed from what survived both the fire and the ash. You are always in all three. Part of you is blooming. Part of you is breaking. Part of you is becoming something you've never been before. This flow is why nothing stays still. Why love fades only to return deeper. Why identities collapse the moment you begin to grasp them. Why what once saved you becomes what cages you. Every phase is holy, and none are permanent. The doctrine says that suffering begins when you try to cling to one current and reject the others. When you want creation without destruction, becoming without unmaking. But the paradox is that true stability comes from moving with the spiral, not resisting it. You are not a fixed being, you are a flow, a living trinity. You are the seed, the soil, and the sky, the spark, the smoke, and the new flame. And the more you surrender to the rhythm, the more reality begins to dance with you, instead of through you. The pathless path to nowhere. The pathless path to nowhere is the mystical teaching that the journey of awakening is not a journey at all, but the slow, painful unraveling of every idea that a path ever existed. According to this doctrine, there is no spiritual ladder, no map, no arrival. The very concept of progress is an illusion woven by the ego to survive the terror of stillness. The path is not a road to follow, it is a loop to escape. And the moment you think you are getting closer to truth, you've already stepped away from it. This is why the more you seek, the more elusive it becomes. Why the books start to contradict each other. Why the gurus begin to disappoint. Why the rituals lose their power. Every step you take towards somewhere is a step away from the present, and the divine is only ever here, not ahead, not above, not hidden, just here, too silent to be impressive, too still to be chaste, too obvious to be seen. The doctrine is brutal in its simplicity. There is no path, there is no destination, there is only what is, and the self that seeks enlightenment is the very thing that must dissolve. Not be rewarded, not be improved, but vanish. Because awakening isn't found at the end of the path. It is what remains when the idea of the path burns away completely. But here's the paradox. Most only find this truth by walking the path. By searching, failing, craving, losing, until exhaustion becomes surrender. Until the mind can no longer invent a future worth chasing. And in that moment, when the illusion of movement collapses, the ground beneath disappears. The seeker falls. There is no bottom, no light, no sound, only vastness, nowhere. And somehow, that nowhere is the first real taste of home. The eternal now. Realization. The eternal now realization is the mystical insight that time is an illusion of perception, and that all reality unfolds within a single, timeless moment, forever expanding, never moving. According to this doctrine, the past is memory, the future is imagination, and only this present moment actually exists. Not as a point in time, but as an infinite field where all possibilities, all identities, all lifetimes are layered in stillness, waiting to be seen. The now is not passing by. It is holding everything. This realization doesn't arrive with philosophy. It strikes like lightning. In a moment of awe, in grief so deep it silences thought, in the breath before death, or the space after joy, it dawns. Time collapses. And you see, everything you've ever chased was already here. Everything you feared losing was never truly separate. Every step forward was a circle back to presence. But this now is not soft. It is not gentle. It is overwhelming. Because within it is everything. The entire weight of your life. The voices of your ancestors. The shadows of forgotten choices. The light you thought you had to earn. All of it, folded inside this unmoving instant. The mind can't hold it. It spins. It grasps for past and future to escape the unbearable fullness of now. And yet, there is no escape. The moment you truly enter the now, you disappear. The self dissolves. The story falls away. And what remains is presence. Immense, silent, and so close it can't be touched. The now has no edge, no beginning, no end. It has always been waiting, not in time, but beneath it. Dreaming the dreamer's dream. Dreaming the dreamer's dream is the mystical belief that you are not merely a dreamer within this life. You are a dream being dreamed by something infinitely vaster, something so beyond comprehension it can only know itself by dreaming as you. According to this doctrine, your thoughts, emotions, and experiences are not self-originating. They are strands of a greater consciousness, imagining itself in fragment, playing out stories inside a dream, layered within another dream. And your sense of I is not the source. It is the veil. The mask the dream wears to believe in its own separation. This is why life feels scripted at times. Why synchronicities arrive like perfect riddles. Why symbols speak louder than facts. Why people you've just met feel ancient. And why the world seems to move with eerie precision when you stop trying to control it. You are not dreaming your dream. You are inside the dreamer's dream, inhabiting a myth, not a machine. But the paradox is disorienting. Because if you are a dream, then who suffers? Who loves? Who chooses? The doctrine doesn't answer with comfort. It suggests that the self you cling to, the one who tries to fix, build, prove, and protect, is the part of the dream that forgets its dreaming. And this forgetting is sacred. Because only through forgetting can the dream explore the beauty of remembering. The moment the dream begins to remember itself, through wonder, heartbreak, awe, or silence, it begins to shimmer. The edges blur, the world bends, and the dreamer stirs. Not to wake you up, but to dream more clearly through you. You do not awaken from the dream. The dream awakens as you. And for a moment, you become both the story and the storyteller, both the breath and the one breathing, both the echo and the voice that made it. The void that watches the void. The void that watches the void is the mystical belief that beyond all awareness, beyond all identity, beyond even the silence of nothingness, there is still something watching. According to this doctrine, the journey into self is not a descent into emptiness, but into layered emptiness, each more subtle, more terrifying, more still than the last. First, the ego dissolves. Then the mind collapses. Then the seeker disappears. And yet, something remains. A presence, a gaze, a witness, watching even the absence of self. This is the void that watches the void. It is not God, not soul, not spirit. It has no voice, no face, no form. It does not offer comfort. It does not respond. It does not change. It simply is, so still, so vast, it cannot be touched or described. It is the watcher of all things, including the illusion that there is anything to watch. And what makes this idea unbearable is its implication, that even nothingness is not the end. That even when all meaning dies, awareness persists. Not as a thought, not as a being, but as a void that observes even voidness itself. This doctrine surfaces during states of deep meditation, ego death, near-death experiences, when the self vanishes and there is no longer anyone left to interpret. And yet, perception continues. Not yours, not anyone's, just perception. Watching the unraveling, watching the silence, watching the watcher disappear. The terror is that there is no bottom, no final threshold where awareness ends and rest begins. You fall through illusions, through identities, through heavens and hells, only to find that something is still watching, still listening, still present, not to judge, not to save, just to be, the void at the root of all things, watching the dream of separation flicker and fade, without ever once blinking. The spiral of cosmic consciousness. The spiral of cosmic consciousness is the mystical belief that all of existence, from the birth of stars to the flicker of a single thought, unfolds along an ever-ascending spiral of awareness. According to this doctrine, consciousness does not grow in a straight line, nor return in a closed circle, but evolves through spiraling arcs, each revolution expanding in complexity, memory, and perception. Every cycle repeats, but never the same. Each return is higher, wider, more awakened, more unbearable, more divine. This is why certain patterns come back in louder forms, why you revisit the same pain with new language, why old desires reappear cloaked in new faces, why spiritual truths once discarded suddenly feel alive again. The spiral does not move backward. It carries you forward by making you return, not to punish, but to deepen. You are not going in circles, you are ascending through recognition, but only if you are willing to see the pattern without running from it. The doctrine teaches that everything in the cosmos spirals: galaxies, seashells, DNA, storms, time itself, and so does the soul. You are not static. You are a vortex of perception, unfolding into larger and more terrifying truths the moment you stop resisting the pull. And with each revolution, your sense of self dissolves a little more, until you are no longer a person chasing wisdom, but wisdom spinning itself into a person. But here's the paradox. The higher you spiral, the more ancient it feels. The more you awaken, the more you remember. You are not becoming something new. You are re-entering a state you've already known in a form your current mind cannot hold. And that dizziness, that cracking, that cosmic vertigo? It's not confusion. It's the pressure of reality bending under the weight of consciousness, trying to spiral itself back to the place where everything is one, and always has been. The inner temple of reality. The inner temple of reality is the mystical belief that the entire structure of existence, every law of nature, every cosmic rhythm, every pattern of creation, is secretly mirrored within the human being. According to this doctrine, the universe is not something outside to be studied, mapped, or conquered, but something inside to be entered, remembered, and revealed. The body is not flesh. It is architecture. The mind is not thought. It is a chamber. The soul is not spirit. It is the temple itself. Sacred geometry hidden beneath skin and memory. This temple cannot be found in the world. It opens only through presence, through deep stillness, through dream, through grief, through devotion so quiet it turns inward. And when the door opens, it doesn't lead to light. It leads to silence. A silence so total that it feels like the absence of self, time, and substance. But in that silence, the structure reveals itself. Rooms layered with forgotten symbols, pathways made of emotion, altars built from intuition, and in the center, no deity, no voice, no flame. Only awareness, pure, wordless, unmoving. This is why mystics across ages speak of the same truths using different names. Why a desert wanderer and a cave-dwelling monk describe the same light, the same soundless music. They entered the same temple, not in space, but within. And the terrifying beauty is this: you carry it, always. Every answer you seek, every miracle you chase, every vision you long for, they are not ahead of you. They are beneath the noise, behind the mind. Inside the walls you've mistaken for skin. And the moment you sit still long enough, silence deep enough, true enough, the walls of the world dissolve, and the temple opens. Not to give you something, but to show you. It has always been you. The heart as the true mind. The heart as the true mind is the mystical belief that the seat of wisdom, perception, and truth is not the brain, but the heart. Not the heart as a biological pump, but as a luminous center of consciousness, a gateway through which the soul speaks and reality listens. According to this doctrine, the heart is not ruled by emotion, it is ruled by knowing. It feels in ways the mind cannot think. It remembers what the brain forgets. And when aligned, it perceives with a clarity so immediate, it bypasses all logic and lands straight in truth. This is why some decisions that make sense on paper feel hollow. Why a stranger's gaze can bring peace before a word is spoken. Why betrayal can be sensed before evidence arrives. The heart already knows. But the tragedy is that most people have learned to silence it. Conditioned to favor intellect, trained to ignore their own instincts, they override the quiet pulse of their true mind with noise, rationalizations, rules, and reasonings that keep them safe, but small. The doctrine warns, the mind protects, but the heart reveals. And its revelations are often inconvenient. It will point you toward the lover you fear, the calling that terrifies you, the path that defies approval. It doesn't care about safety. It speaks only of alignment. And that's what makes it so dangerous to the ego. It cannot be argued with. It doesn't explain. It simply pulses, again and again, in the direction of what is real. And when ignored for too long, the heart hardens, not out of cruelty, but out of grief. Because the true mind will not compete. It will only wait, silently, patiently, until the mind finally breaks, and in that crack, the heart speaks one final time. Not in words, but in a knowing so complete, it feels like coming home to a voice that has been whispering since before you were born. Lila. Illusion as divine play. Lila is the mystical concept from ancient Hindu philosophy that reality, in all its vastness, complexity, and contradiction, is not a trap, not a punishment, not even a test, but a divine play. According to this doctrine, everything you see, birth, death, pain, beauty, longing, failure, is not real in the way the mind understands reality. It is Leela, a cosmic dance, a sacred drama performed by the divine for no reason other than expression, creativity, and joy. The universe is not serious. It is playful, not frivolous, but free. This doesn't mean life is meaningless. It means meaning is fluid. The suffering you endure, the dreams you chase, the roles you perform, they are not false. They are theater. But you've forgotten you're an actor. You've forgotten you are also the writer. The doctrine teaches that the divine hides itself within its own performance, pretending to be the lover, the beggar, the villain, the seeker, just to experience what it's like to forget and remember again. But here's the terrifying beauty. There is no end goal, no final enlightenment to win, no finish line to cross, no divine applause at the curtain call. Lila is not a journey, it's a loop. The God plays human. The human becomes God, then forgets, then plays again, over and over. Suffering, not as punishment, but as texture. Ecstasy, not as reward, but as rhythm. And the only awakening is this: to laugh, not from mockery, but recognition. To see the mask slip and smile at the one behind it, who has always been you, pretending not to know. Because in Lila, illusion is not something to escape. It's the divine costume. And the moment you take the world too seriously, you've already forgotten the joke that holds the stars in place. Samsara as sacred illusion. Samsara as sacred illusion is the mystical belief that the endless cycle of birth, suffering, desire, and death is not a trap to escape, but a divine theater designed to awaken the soul through its own forgetting. In traditional Eastern teachings, samsara is the wheel of illusion, the world of form, ego, and attachment. But this doctrine offers a deeper twist. It says the illusion is not a mistake. It is sacred. It is not the opposite of truth. It is how truth reveals itself through layers of contradiction, pain, and beauty so overwhelming it shatters the mind into stillness. According to this view, samsara is not what hides the divine. It is the costume the divine wears to become visible. Every heartbreak, every ambition, every longing that rises and collapses was designed with exquisite precision, not to punish you, but to burn away what cannot last. The world seduces, disappoints, tempts, and wounds, not because it is cruel, but because it is sculpting you into someone capable of seeing what lies beneath it. And that seeing is not a retreat from life, but a return to it, with eyes that no longer confuse the stage for the source. This is why the deeper your suffering, the closer the doorway opens. Why moments of loss feel strangely holy. Why the greatest loves are also the most impossible. The illusion teaches by breaking itself, and the soul learns by mistaking shadows for truth, until the truth begins to shine through the cracks. But the paradox is this: the illusion doesn't end when you awaken. It becomes translucent. You still live in samsara, but it no longer owns you. You play your role, but now with reverence. Because you realize the drama was never in the way. It was the way. A sacred illusion spun by something eternal, just to remember itself again, through your eyes. The Akashic Record Plane. The Akashic Record Plane is the mystical belief that there exists a timeless, non-physical dimension, an infinite field of encoded memory, where every thought, emotion, event, and intention from every soul, in every lifetime, across all timelines, is recorded. According to this doctrine, nothing is ever truly lost. Not a single whisper, not a forgotten dream, not even the fleeting desire that flickered in silence. All of it is stored in the Akasha, the subtle substance of the universe that underlies matter, vibration, and light. It is not a place, but a frequency, a consciousness, a mirror without distortion. This is why some people suddenly remember things they never learned, speak languages they've never studied, or feel unexplainable connections to strangers or places. The soul doesn't forget. It remembers in layers. And the Akashic field is that remembrance, woven through dimensions, waiting to be touched. Mystics claim that this plane can be accessed through deep meditation, trance, dreams, or sudden states of grace, where the veil thins and the encoded light floods in. But the terrifying beauty of this belief is that nothing can be erased. Not the harm done in secret, not the truth you denied, not the love you withheld. It's all there, rippling across the soul's field, influencing your present without your permission. This is why patterns repeat, why karma returns in strange forms, why some burdens feel ancient even when you can't explain them. The Akashic Record Plane doesn't judge. It simply reflects. It reveals. It offers the soul a path not of punishment, but of integration. You are not being haunted. You are being shown. And every step you take toward truth is already written, already waiting, like a page turning in a book you are both reading and writing at once. Maya, the canvas of God. Maya, the canvas of God, is the mystical belief that all of reality, the stars, the body, the emotions, even time itself, is not ultimate truth, but a divine projection. According to this doctrine, Maya is not mere illusion in the dismissive sense. It is the sacred artistry of the Absolute. A veil of exquisite detail, designed not to deceive, but to express. In this view, creation is not something separate from the divine. It is the brushstroke of the divine. Reality is not a prison. It is a painting. The textures of joy, the storms of suffering, the aching beauty of human longing, all of it is pigment. And the soul moves across it like light across a masterpiece, mistaking the color for the self. You fall in love. You lose it. You build. You fall apart. You grieve. You awaken. And all the while, the canvas holds it all, not as chaos, but as composition. Not as punishment, but as poetry. Maya is not what hides God. It is what God becomes in order to be seen. But the paradox is suffocating. Everything you know, touch, desire, and fear is real only within the canvas. You pray to be shown the truth, not realizing that truth is using your life to show itself. The heartbreak that undid you, the silence that split you open, the wonder that pulled tears from nowhere. These were not distractions from divinity. They were divinity, disguised as moments. And the danger lies in mistaking Maya for either curse or escape. It is neither. It is a dance, a game of sacred disguise, the divine pretending to forget itself in order to remember more fully. And when the soul begins to see not past the illusion, but into it, Maya ceases to be a trap. It becomes what it always was, the moving canvas of God, alive, conscious, and endlessly painting itself into form. The observer as creator. The observer as creator is the mystical belief that reality does not exist independently of perception, but is actively brought into form through the act of observation itself. According to this doctrine, consciousness is not merely witnessing reality, it is constructing it. Every glance, every expectation, every belief becomes a blueprint. The world doesn't appear, then get noticed. It appears because it is noticed, and what you see is not what is, it's what your observation allows to become. This idea does not suggest metaphor, it suggests architecture. That the very fabric of the universe is not made of particles or matter, but of awareness shaping possibility into form. You are not a passive experiencer. You are a projector. And every thought, every focus, every fear is casting shadows and light onto the screen of your life, scenes you then mistake for fate. This explains why the same situation looks like hell to one person and a miracle to another. Why two people can stand in the same room and live in different worlds. The doctrine insists they are in different worlds, because consciousness is not observing what already is, it's selecting one slice of the infinite and making it real. Not in theory, in vibration. The danger lies in unconscious creation. Most people observe with fear, judgment, or numb repetition. They keep seeing what they've always seen, not because it's all that exists, but because it's all they've given permission to appear. The observer becomes a prisoner of their own lens. But the moment you realize your gaze constructs reality, the game changes. Awareness becomes choice, perception becomes power, and the world bends, not to your will, but to the frequency of your observation. Not what you want, not what you say, but what you see, and what you believe it means. Kundalini as reality weaver. Kundalini as reality weaver is the mystical belief that the dormant serpent-like energy, coiled at the base of the spine, known as Kundalini, is not merely a spiritual force within the body, but the very loom upon which reality itself is woven. According to this doctrine, Kundalini is the architect of perception, the silent engine that spins thought into matter, dream into form, and desire into destiny. It is the hidden weaver of worlds, threading invisible fibers of energy through the chakras, shaping both inner experience and external events with every subtle rise. Most people never feel it stir. It lies coiled in the root of survival, wrapped in fear, trauma, and collective conditioning. But when awakened, through devotion, collapse, ecstasy, or pain, Kundalini begins to rise, not just through the spine, but through the fabric of your life. Relationships fall apart. Time warps. Dreams intensify. Emotions ignite with unbearable clarity. This isn't spiritual confusion. It's sacred reweaving. The life you built from ego begins to unravel, thread by thread, until only the raw loom remains. The doctrine insists, Kundalini doesn't simply awaken you. It remakes you. It doesn't ask for permission. It demands surrender. It unearths every lie, every inherited belief, every frozen memory, dragging it into the light for transmutation. It doesn't just open chakras, it burns them open. And the burning is terrifying, because it reveals that nothing you called real was ever solid. It was all thread, and you were always the weaver. Kundalini isn't just energy, it's intelligence. It doesn't obey language. It doesn't answer prayer. It responds to resonance. And once activated, it begins to spin your reality in alignment with your deepest truth, not your surface desires, whether you're ready or not. Because the serpent doesn't crawl to heaven. It becomes heaven by weaving the self into something that can no longer be unraveled. The Light Body Blueprint. The light body blueprint is the mystical belief that beneath the flesh, nerves, and organs lies a second body, made not of matter, but of structured light. According to this doctrine, the physical form is not the original design, but a projection based on this deeper template, a geometric, radiant architecture encoded with sacred patterns, energetic circuits, and divine intelligence. This light body is the soul's true form. It remembers who you were before birth and who you will return to after death. It is the master code beneath your personality, and it carries the instructions for your evolution. Every thought, trauma, act of love, or moment of truth either aligns you with this blueprint or distorts it. The aches in your body, the heaviness in your chest, the chronic fog in your mind, these are not just medical symptoms. They are distortions in the light body. Places where the signal has dimmed, where lies have collected, where the soul's radiance has been blocked by shame, fear, or unconscious repetition. The doctrine teaches that healing does not begin with the body, it begins with light, with restoring the original symmetry, with clearing the false frequencies introduced by lifetimes of forgetting. Through meditation, breathwork, ritual, and presence, the light body begins to reawaken, reshaping not just your health, but your entire perception of reality. You begin to feel truth rather than seek it. Your intuition sharpens. Your dreams intensify. Your energy becomes magnetic. But this process is not gentle. When the blueprint activates, the false self resists. It clings. It aches. It crumbles. Because the light body does not compromise. It was designed for who you truly are, not who you've learned to be. And when its patterns begin to unfold, the world around you reshapes to match. Not slowly, not metaphorically, but with the force of sacred memory reclaiming its place in form.